The air in the Department of Mysteries always carried a hush, as if silence had weight here, pressing against the eardrums like water at the bottom of a lake. Harry stepped through the black doorway, his boots muffled on the obsidian floor, and the heavy stone slab sealed shut behind him with a soft final sigh. He wasn't alone. Luna Lovegood stood a few paces ahead, her pale fingers brushing the edge of a cracked archway, draped in tattered veils. She didn't turn, but he knew she'd sensed him. "They said it began with whispers," she murmured, her voice drifting like smoke. Not words, just echoes of syllables, as if someone tried to speak but forgot how. Harry adjusted his glasses, peering into the dim chamber ahead. A single orb of silver light hovered near the ceiling, pulsing faintly, casting long shadows that stretched and curled like living things. The room was circular, its walls lined with shelves of dusty glass vials, filled with swirling mist, forgotten prophecies, most likely, or memories too fragile to be trusted. But at the center stood the mirror. It was ancient, taller than a man, framed in blackened bronze-shaped, like entwined serpents, with eyes of moonstone. The glass wasn't reflective in the usual way. It didn't show Harry's face. Instead it rippled like water, dark and deep, as though looking into a well at midnight. "That's it," said a voice from the shadows. An unspeakable stepped forward, their face hidden beneath a hood sewn with constellations. "We found it 3 days ago. It wasn't here before. Or, it was, but it wasn't active." Harry frowned. "What do you mean? It wasn't active?" "We've catalogued every object in this wing for over 2 centuries, the unspeakable replied, voice genderless and cool. This mirror was sealed behind a wall of enchanted stone. No record of its removal, yet the wall is intact. And yet, here it stands. Luna tilted her head as if listening to something beyond hearing. "It's breathing," she said. Harry glanced at her. "What? The mirror? It's not just magic. It's alive, or it remembers being alive." He stepped forward, heart thudding. The surface of the glass darkened further. Then, slowly, light blued within it. Not a reflection, a scene. A meadow under a twilight sky, streaked with violet and gold. A young girl with wild silvery blonde hair ran barefoot through tall grass, laughing. A boy with messy black hair chased her, calling her name Luna. But his voice sounded distant, as if heard through a wall of water. Harry froze. That wasn't possible. He'd never run through a meadow with Luna as a child. They'd barely spoken until their 5th year at Hogwarts. And yet, his chest tightened. The laughter, the warmth of the fading sun on his skin, the smell of crushed thyme and earth. It all felt real, more real than memory. "It's not true," Luna whispered beside him, her breath catching. "But it feels like home." The image shifted. Now it showed a small cottage by a cliff, waves crashing below. A woman with Luna's eyes stood in the doorway, waving. A man with Harry's smile held a book aloft, reading aloud. Smoke curled from the chimney. A dog barked. "I never lived there," Luna said, her voice small, "but I miss it." Harry reached out, fingers hovering just above the glass. The surface trembled. A low hum filled the room, resonant and deep, like the note of a cello played beneath the earth. "We've seen 7 variations so far," the unspeakable said. "Each shows moments that never happened, lives that were never lived. But those who look remember them, and—" asked, not taking his eyes from the mirror. "Some haven't looked away since." Luna turned to him, her wide eyes silver in the dim light. "They're not false memories, Harry. They're lost ones. Something tried to protect them, hid them here." In reflection, he swallowed. The mirror pulsed again, and for a heartbeat, he saw another scene. Himself, older, sitting on a porch swing. A child with green eyes, and Luna's smile in his lap. A teacup steaming beside him. Peace, thick and golden, like honey in sunlight. Then it was gone. Harry exhaled, slow and unsteady. "We need to find where it came from," he said. Luna nodded. And why it chose now to wake. The mirror remained still, dark once more. But in its depths, something stirred, like a dream turning in its sleep. The air in the Department of Mysteries was never still. It hummed with the quiet tension of unseen forces, whispers caught in the stone, shadows that flickered just beyond sight. Harry stood before the obsidian mirror, its surface like pooled ink under torchlight, unyielding and deep. It had shown him a child's handprint earlier that morning, small and smudged, pressed against the glass from the other side. No one had touched it, no one could, and yet there it remained, fading only when he blinked. He had seen other things too. A woman with silver hair braided with feathers, humming a lullaby in a language he didn't know, but somehow understood. A garden growing upside down beneath a sky of shifting constellations. A clock without numbers, its hands moving backward in slow, deliberate arcs. These weren't visions, too clear, too detailed. They were memories, but not his. 3 other oars had looked into the mirror. None had seen anything. It showed only blank reflection to them. To Harry, it unraveled fragments of a life he had never lived. He rubbed his temple, the ache behind his eyes persistent. The mirror had been dormant for centuries, catalogued as a Class F artifact, non-responsive, possibly decorative. Then last week, it shimmered. Then it spoke his name in a voice like wind through reeds. Then it showed him a girl with wide, moon-pale eyes, laughing as she ran through a field of blue flowers. He didn't know her, but his chest tightened at the sight. He needed someone who listened to what others dismissed. Luna Lovegood arrived just past noon, stepping through the breach in the veil chamber, with a quiet grace, as though she had simply stepped from one thought to another. She wore a coat, the color of storm clouds, lined with feathers that weren't quite bird, not quite moth. Around her neck hung a necklace of dried rowing berries, and a single opal that caught the dim light like a captured star. "Hello, Harry," she said, her voice soft but certain, as if she had been expecting him all along. He turned, surprised she hadn't startled him. Most people announced themselves with noise, with urgency. Luna simply appeared like a thought finally remembered. "He felt it too, didn't you?" he asked. She tilted her head, studying the mirror. Not the surface, the silence behind it, the space where something is trying to breathe. She stepped forward, unhurried, and placed her palm flat against the glass. It didn't repel her. Instead, the mirror rippled, once, gently, like water stirred by a falling leaf. "I've seen this before," she said, not looking at him. "Not exactly, but I felt it. In dreams. In the hush between heartbeats. It's not a mirror, Harry. It's a threshold. A threshold to what? To what remembers us." He frowned. "You're saying it's alive?" "Not alive. Not dead. More like waiting." She lowered her hand slowly. "It shows you things, doesn't it? Things you don't know, but feel true." "Yes, a garden, a song, a child. The girl with the blue flowers," Luna finished. "She's not a memory. She's a possibility. One that was lost. The mirror doesn't show the past. It shows what was meant to be remembered." He stared at her. "How do you know that?" "Because I've dreamed of her, too. For years. She calls me sister in the dream language. And every time I wake I forget her name, but not her voice." Harry exhaled, the weight in his chest shifting. He had thought he was losing his mind, or that the mirror was cursed. But Luna stood there, calm and unshaken, as if she had walked this edge before. "The ministry wants to seal it," he said. "Classify it as unstable. But I think it's trying to tell us something." Luna smiled faintly. "Mirrors don't speak in words. They speak in longing. And this one, it's been lonely. A very long time." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small vial filled with shimmering dust. "Moon-kissed dandelion seeds," she called them once. She uncorked it and let a single seed drift toward the mirror. It hovered for a moment, then sank into the glass like a stone into deep water. The surface shimmered again, and for a heartbeat the reflection changed. Not Harry, not Luna, but 2 figures side by side, standing beneath a tree with silver bark, their hands almost touching. Then it was gone. Luna touched her chest just over her heart. "It knows us," she whispered, "even if we've forgotten how to know it back." Harry looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were bright, unafraid, and for the first time since the mirror had spoken his name, he didn't feel alone. The air in the forgotten corridor of the Department of Mysteries hung thick with silence, the kind that pressed against the ears like cotton soaked in cold water. Torchlight flickered unevenly along the obsidian walls, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed reluctant to hold still. Luna Lovegood stepped forward barefoot, her toes curling slightly against the damp stone, her pale fingers trailing the wall, as if reading Braille. Only she could decipher. Harry followed close behind, wand raised, the tip glowing a soft blue that trembled with each breath he took. "It wasn't here before," Luna murmured, her voice like wind through dry reeds. "I passed this way 3 nights ago. The wall was solid then. No door, no mirror." Harry narrowed his eyes. Before them stood an archway, tall and narrow, carved with spirals that coiled like sleeping serpents. In its center rested a mirror, tall, freestanding, its frame wrought of black and silver-shaped, like intertwined roots. The glass didn't reflect the corridor. Instead, it showed a field beneath a twilight sky, golden grass rippling under a wind that didn't exist in this place. A figure stood in the distance, small and indistinct, facing away. "Who is that?" Harry asked, stepping closer. Luna tilted her head as if listening to a sound just beyond hearing. "I don't know, but I feel I've seen this before. Not with my eyes, with my bones." Harry reached out, fingers hovering just above the surface. The glass shimmered, not like water, but like heat rising off stone. "It's warm." As he spoke, the image shifted. The field vanished. Now the mirror showed a stone courtyard bathed in pale morning light. A woman in a long sea-green dress knelt beside a fountain, her hands cupped around something small and glowing. Her face was turned toward the glass, and for a heartbeat, Harry felt his breath catch. He didn't know her, and yet, he did. A memory that wasn't his pressed against the back of his skull, soft and insistent as a dream upon waking. "She's sad," Luna whispered, but not for herself. The woman looked up, her eyes wide and silver-gray, like moonlight on still water. Then the mirror flickered, and the courtyard dissolved into a winding forest path, dappled with sunlight. A boy, no older than 10, ran past the frame, laughing. He turned back, grinning, and Harry felt a jolt in his chest. That smile. He'd seen it in the mirror above the fireplace at Grimmauld Place. He'd seen it in old photographs of his father. "This isn't possible," Harry said, stepping back. "That's James, but he never know," Luna said softly. "Not James, someone else, or someone else who was also him." She moved closer, her reflection still absent from the glass. The image shifted again. Now a library, with shelves that stretched into darkness, books bound in bark and bone. A hand reached across the table, placing a cup of steaming tea beside an open book. The hand trembled slightly. The tea was chamomile. Harry could smell it, honey and hay, and something faintly bitter. "You used to drink this when you couldn't sleep," Luna said, almost to herself. "You said it reminded you of your mother's garden." Harry stared at her. "What?" She didn't answer. She was watching the mirror now, her lips parted. The scene changed once more. This time a small room lit by candlelight. A woman sat at a desk writing. Her hair was long and dark, her profile sharp with concentration. She paused, dipped her quill again, then wrote a single word, "Remember." And then the mirror moved. It slid backward silently into the archway, the stone groaning as if waking from a long dream. The frame shivered, the roots in the silver twisting like living things, and the glass darkened. For a moment it showed only their own reflections. Harry's scarred forehead, his green eyes wide with disbelief. Luna's pale face, her gaze steady, almost knowing. Then it showed something else. 2 figures side by side standing beneath a great tree with bark like silver thread. Their hands were clasped. Their faces were blurred, as if seen through rain. But the feeling, the quiet certainty, the warmth, that was clear. Luna exhaled. "It's not showing us the past," she said. "It's showing us what the past forgot." The mirror stilled. The air grew colder. And somewhere deep within the walls, a single note hummed, like a bell struck underwater, echoing through time. The glass breathed. Harry didn't know how else to describe it. It wasn't a sound, not exactly, but a sensation in the marrow. A low, resonant hum that vibrated up through the soles of his boots and into his ribs. The mirror stood in the center of a circular chamber deep beneath the ministry, its surface neither silver nor mercury, but something older, like still water under moonlight, that refused to ripple. It didn't reflect the dim blue torches or the cracked obsidian floor. It reflected elsewhere. Luna stood beside him, barefoot despite the cold, her fingers lightly tracing the air inches from the glass. She didn't touch it. "Not yet. It remembers us," she whispered. Harry frowned. It's a mirror. It doesn't remember anything. No, she said, tilting her head. But we do, or we should. And then the surface shifted. Not a reflection. Never that. But a scene unfolding like a dream, half remembered upon waking. A summer meadow under a sky the color of crushed violets. 2 children ran through tall grass, laughing. One had Harry's unruly hair, the other Luna's wide silver eyes. They were chasing butterflies with wings like stained glass, their hands brushing as they darted between wildflowers that pulsed with faint light. A woman with Lily's eyes stood at the edge of the clearing, smiling. Not Lily, Harry knew that, but someone shaped like her, with the same warmth in her gaze. His breath caught. That's not... I've never been there, he said, voice tight. No, Luna said softly. But you've missed it. She stepped closer. The image rippled, then changed. Now they were older, teenagers standing on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a sea that glowed with bioluminescent tides. The air smelt of salt and something sweet, like bird sugar. They held wands, but not the ones Harry knew. Hers was made of driftwood and starlight. His, a shard of blackthorn wrapped in silver thread. They weren't fighting. They were casting, together, their voices rising in a harmony that made the stars above shiver. A shield of light unfurled across the horizon, holding back a storm that wasn't made of clouds but of whispering shadows. Harry's scar prickled, not with pain, but with longing. I don't know that spell, he said. I've never seen that coast. Luna reached out, her fingertips grazing the mirror's surface. A shiver ran through her. But you know the feeling, the way the magic fits between us, like 2 halves of the same breath. Another shift. Snow fell in silence over a village nestled in a valley between mist-wreathed mountains. Smoke curled from chimneys. There were no cars, no electricity, only lanterns glowing gold behind frost-laced windows. They walked side by side down a cobbled street, shoulders touching, bundled in thick cloaks. He carried a basket of herbs. She carried a book bound in pale leather. People waved. A child ran up, handing Luna a sprig of holly with silver berries. She knelt, said something kind, and the child laughed. Harry's chest ached. I don't know those people, he said. I've never lived there. But you remember the quiet, Luna said, the way the snow muffled the world, the way you felt. Safe. He did. Gods. He did. The weight of peace, the absence of dread, it pressed against his ribs like a forgotten song. The mirror stilled. Then gently, it showed them standing together in a room filled with books and jars of preserved moths, with feathers pinned to the walls and a mobile of constellations turning slowly above. A teacup steamed between them. Outside the window, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues no name had ever captured. They weren't speaking. They didn't need to. Their hands rested close on the table, almost touching. Luna exhaled. This one's real, she said. It's not a memory, it's a promise. Harry looked at her, really looked. At the faint constellations freckled across her nose, the quiet certainty in her gaze, the way her hair caught the dim white like moon dust. He had no memory of that room, but he knew, with a clarity that startled him, that he would find it. Someday. And she would be waiting. The mirror went dark, but the ache remained. Not of loss, of recognition. It's not showing us what was, Harry said slowly. It's showing us what could have been. What should have been. Luna smiled, small and secret. Or what still is, just hidden. And in the silence that followed, the glass began to glow again. Softly, like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the world. The air in the Ministry archives tasted of dust and forgotten ink, thick enough to coat the back of Harry's throat as he flipped open another empty folio. The leather-bound book fell open like a sigh, its pages bleached pale as if drained of every word ever written. He turned it over, checked the spine, MR 418, then tapped his wand against the label, Revelio, Prior Incantato, Finite Historia. Nothing, not even a flicker. Beside him, Luna knelt on the cold stone floor, her fingers tracing the grooves in the shelf where a volume should have been. Her wand was tucked behind her ear, and her pale eyes moved slowly across the row, as if reading something invisible. They didn't just vanish, she said softly. They were unmade. Harry exhaled through his nose, frustration simmering beneath his ribs. Unmade? That's not possible. not completely. There's always a trace, a residue, a memory in the parchment, even if it's been burned or cursed to silence. But what if it wasn't meant to be found? Luna stood, brushing dust from her robes. Her voice remained calm, almost dreamlike, but there was a weight beneath it. What if the forgetting was the point? These records weren't stolen, Harry. They were excised, like a wound the world doesn't want to remember. He looked at her, then really looked. The dim green glow of the archival wards cast shifting patterns across her face, catching the faint silver in her eyes. She wasn't just guessing. She knew something, or felt it, with Luna, was often the same. He shut the folio with a dull thud and moved to the next shelf. MR 499, empty. MR 420, nothing but blank pages, the edges slightly singed, though no fire had touched them. He tried every revealing charm he knew. Even the tracking spell Hermione had once taught him, the one that followed the echo of a document's creation, fizzled out like a dying candle. They wiped the trail, he muttered. Clean. Whoever did this didn't just want to hide the mirror's origin. They wanted to erase it from history. Luna tilted her head, listening to something he couldn't hear. The mirror remembers, though. That's why it shows us those things. The garden with the silver trees, the city beneath the sea. It's holding on to what the world let go. He thought of the image again, himself. But not himself, walking hand in hand with a woman who looked like Ginny, but wasn't, through a courtyard filled with floating lanterns. The memory had no origin, no before or after. Yet it ached in his chest like a lost birthday, a dream he'd lived once and forgotten. This wasn't just bureaucracy, he said. This was deliberate. Someone didn't want us to know where that mirror came from, or why. Luna stepped closer to the shelf, pressing her palm flat against the stone. The Department of Mysteries doesn't just store secrets, it protects them. Maybe this mirror isn't dangerous because it shows false memories. Maybe it's dangerous because they're true, and someone decided the truth should be lost. A cold draft curled through the archive, though there were no windows, no doors ajar. The candles flickered, their flames bending sideways for a moment, as if pulled by an unseen breath. Harry felt it then, a pressure behind his eyes, faint but insistent, like a whisper at the edge of sleep. For a heartbeat, he saw it again. The silver trees, the woman's smile, the weight of a child's hand in his. Then it was gone. He looked at Luna. She was watching him, her expression knowing, gentle. They thought they could erase it, she said. But memories don't die. They wait. And sometimes they find their way back. Not in books, but in reflections. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence between them was full of things unspoken, of lives that might have been, of a truth buried so deep even time had forgotten its name. But not the mirror. The mirror remembered. The air in the Department of Mysteries was always still, but tonight it hummed. Not with sound. No, it was a vibration beneath the skin, a thrumming in the molders, like the world had inhaled and not yet exhaled. Luna Lovegood traced her fingers along the edge of the mirror's obsidian frame, her nails catching on tiny runes carved in a script that looked like water frozen mid-spiral. The glass itself was clouded, not with dust, but with something deeper, memories that weren't theirs, yet felt like bruises on the soul. Harry stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight. He'd stopped flinching at the visions hours ago. Now he watched the mirror like a man waiting for a storm to break. It moved again, he said quietly. Luna didn't turn. Not the mirror, the reflection. He frowned. Same thing, isn't it? No, she said. The mirror is the door, the image is the traveler. She reached into the pocket of her patched coat and pulled out a brittle scroll, its edges yellowed, like old moonlight. It had been tucked behind a loose brick in the archive of unverified resonances, found only because Luna had dreamt of kestrels flying through stone corridors the night before. The map was drawn in iron gull ink, faded but legible, a web of silver lines connecting places no longer on any ministry chart. Stone circles swallowed by heather, wells that dried up centuries ago, but still sang when the wind dipped below freezing. Places where time forgot to pass. The ley lines, Luna murmured. They've shifted. Harry stepped closer, his breath stirring the wisps of her hair. Since when do ley lines move? Since they remembered something, she said, unrolling the parchment across a stone pedestal. Look. He bent over it. The map pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Where the lines intersected, small symbols glowed, faint at first, then stronger. A spiral, a bird in flight, a cup half filled with starlight. Each one flickered in sequence, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. "That one," Luna said, pointing to a cluster near the northern edge. "It wasn't lit yesterday." Harry squinted. "That's near the ruins at Caer Ithon." "Once called the House of Forgotten Names," she replied. "Where the wind speaks in vowels no language uses." He looked at her. "You've been there, in a dream, or a memory. I'm not sure which matters more." Outside the chamber, the torches guttered, though there was no draught. The mirror rippled, and for a moment the reflection wasn't the room behind them, but a hilltop under a violet dusk, two figures standing hand in hand, their faces blurred, their robes the color of storm clouds. A lute played somewhere, though no one held it. The air smelled of thyme and wet stone. Harry blinked and it was gone. "Did you see?" he started. "Their hands," Luna whispered. "They were wearing rings, twined silver like roots." He exhaled slowly. "This map, it's not just showing places, it's showing when." She tilted her head, considering. "Time isn't a line, Harry, not really. It's more like tides, and some places remember the high water." He traced one of the glowing lines with his fingertip. It warmed beneath his touch. "So the mirror isn't showing us the past, it's showing us what the land hasn't let go of." "Yes," she said softly, "and something is waking it up." Silence settled between them, not heavy, but full, like the pause before a song begins. Somewhere deep in the department, a bell chimed once, though no one had rung it. Luna rolled the map carefully, tying it with a strip of blue ribbon. "We should go to Caer Ithon," she said, "before the next tide." Harry looked at the mirror one last time. The glass was still now, but he could feel it, like a heartbeat under stone, like a name on the tip of his tongue, almost remembered. "All right," he said, and for the first time since the visions began, he didn't feel like he was chasing a mystery. He felt like he was coming home. The wind at the edge of the moor carried the scent of wet stone and old heather, whispering through the cracks of the watchtower's crumbling walls. Harry stepped over a fallen lintel, its surface etched with runes that shimmered faintly under the overcast sky. His boots crunched on lichen-covered slate, and with every step the air grew heavier, not with magic as he knew it, but with the weight of something half-remembered. Luna followed soundlessly behind, her fingers trailing along the moss-laden stones, her eyes closed, as if reading the tower through touch alone. "Do you hear that?" she asked, her voice soft, almost reluctant. Harry paused. At first there was only the wind, but then, faint, like a memory played backward, he caught it. A laugh, not loud, not mocking, but warm, familiar in a way that unsettled him. It seemed to come from within the stones themselves. "I hear it," he said, glancing over his shoulder. The tower stood in a shallow circle of standing stones, their tops worn smooth by centuries. The mirror they'd been tracking had pulsed with an image of this place last night. Luna in a blue dress he'd never seen her wear, standing beneath a sky streaked with violet, reaching for a hand that wasn't there. And now the echoes. Luna stepped into the center of the ruin. "It was a festival," she said, opening her eyes. "They used to gather here when the stars aligned over the northern ridge. Children would climb the stones and pretend they were owls. One of them fell, broke his arm. He laughed the whole time." "How do you know that?" Harry asked, frowning. "I remember it," she said simply. "Not my memory, but it feels like one." A breeze stirred the dust at their feet. For a moment the stones seemed to hum, low, resonant, like a song half sung. Then footsteps, delicate, quick, dancing on stone that no longer held weight. 2 sets. Then laughter again. This time, 2 voices, one high and clear, the other, deeper, tinged with amusement. Harry turned sharply. "There's no one here." "No," Luna agreed, "but they were." She knelt and pressed her palm flat against the earth. The ground beneath the tower was warm, unnaturally so. The stones remember, not just events, emotions, moments that mattered. This place was loved. Harry crouched beside her. "Like the mirror?" "Like the mirror," she repeated. "But the mirror shows what never was. This shows what was, but no one remembers." A flicker at the corner of his vision made him turn. For just a heartbeat, a girl in a sun-bleached dress darted between two stones, her hair flying behind her, like ribbons. Then she was gone, but the echo of her giggle lingered, curling around the tower like smoke. Luna stood slowly. "They're not trapped," she said. "They're not ghosts. They're kept." By what? By the need to be remembered. She looked at him then, her silvery eyes wide and steady. When something matters enough, it doesn't vanish. It waits, in stone, in wind, in the spaces between breaths. Harry exhaled. He thought of his parents, of Sirius, of all the moments he'd never lived, all the laughter he'd never heard. "Do you think that's why the mirror found us? Because we know what it's like to miss what we never had?" Luna didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, smooth stone, obsidian, veined with threads of silver. She placed it gently in his hand. "Hold it," she said. "And listen." He did. And then, clearer than before, the voices returned. Not from the stones, but from within him. A woman singing. A man humming along. A child clapping in delight. The tower wasn't replaying the past. It was offering it. Not as history. As home. And for the first time in years, Harry felt something unclench in his chest. Not grief, not longing, but recognition. As if somewhere beneath the weight of war and loss, this moment had always been waiting for him to remember it. The air in the Hall of Records tasted of dust and old parchment, thick with the silence of forgotten things. Luna stood motionless in the center of the chamber, her wand unlit, her breath slow and even. Around her, shelves stretched into shadow, laden with glass orbs that pulsed faintly, like dormant stars. Harry stood near the entrance, his hand on his wand, eyes scanning the darkness for movement that never came. She didn't need light to see what was wrong. It wasn't a sound, or a shape, or even a smell, though the place carried the scent of ink that had dried decades ago, and leather that no longer remembered warmth. It was the absence, not emptiness, not silence, but the kind of absence that aches, like a tooth pulled so long ago, the gum has healed smooth, yet the tongue still searches for it. "There's someone missing," Luna said, her voice soft, not because she feared being overheard, but because the space demanded reverence. Harry turned. "What do you mean?" She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to a frequency just beyond hearing. "Not missing like lost. Missing like erased. Like someone stood here once, and everyone who might have remembered them forgot. Not on purpose, not by magic. Just gone from memory, as if the world blinked, and they were no longer part of the picture." Harry frowned. He stepped forward, boots tapping lightly on the stone. "You mean like a memory charm?" "No," Luna said. "Those leave scars. You can feel the edges. This is smoother, older, like a name that was never written in the first place." She walked slowly toward the center of the room, where a single pedestal stood. Bare, nor orb, no book, no inscription. Just smoothed marble, worn by time or touch. Her fingers hovered above the surface. A chill rose from it, not of temperature, but of absence. It made the hairs on her arms lift. Harry joined her. "This pedestal, it should hold something." "It does," she whispered. "It holds the shape of what was taken." He looked at her, puzzled. But then he saw it. The way the dust settled unevenly around the base, forming a faint outline, like a footprint in snow that had melted but left the ground darker beneath. And the air above the pedestal. It shimmered, not with magic, but with negation, as if light itself hesitated to touch the space. "I can't look directly at it," Harry said, blinking. "It's like when you stare at the sun and look away. There's a spot that isn't there, but you know it was." Luna nodded. "That's them." "Them? You saying it's a person?" "A memory of a person. Or perhaps a person may have memory. I don't think they ever had a body the way we do. Not flesh, not bone, but presence. They were a keeper. A guardian of this hall, long before the ministry claimed it. Before records were numbered and sorted. When memory was still alive in stones." Harry swallowed. "And now? Now the world forgot them. And when no one remembers, even magic fades, even truth." She reached out, not to touch the pedestal, but to the air above it. Her fingers trembled slightly. A hum, soft and sorrowful, rose from the space, so faint it might have been the wind if they weren't underground. And then, for the briefest moment, a shadow formed, not of a figure, but of an impression. A long cloak, a hand resting on the marble, a face with no features, only the suggestion of eyes that had watched centuries pass like pages turning. Harry stepped back. "Did you see?" "I saw that they were kind," Luna said, "and lonely, and they stayed long after everyone else left. They stayed until no one came to remember, and then they unbecame." She lowered her hand. The hum faded. The air settled. "But they're not gone," she added. "Not entirely. You can't erase a guardian. You can only forget them, and forgetting isn't the same as gone." Harry looked at her, then back at the empty pedestal. "What was their name?" Luna smiled, faint and sad. "That's the tragedy. We don't know. No one does. It was never written. But maybe names aren't the only way to be remembered." Outside, far above, a bell chimed. 10 o'clock perhaps, or midnight. Time moved on. But in that hall, for a breath, something ancient had stirred. Not returned, not restored, but acknowledged. And sometimes that was enough. The air in the Hall of Prophecy was still, thick with the quiet hum of forgotten magic, but the mirror stood restless. It did not shimmer. There was no flash or flare, but its surface rippled like water disturbed by a breath. Luna stood before it, her fingers barely an inch from the glass, not quite touching. She had whispered her mother's name earlier, soft as a sigh, and the mirror had answered, not with sound, but with image. A woman in a pale blue dress, turning a page of a spell book with one hand while the other stirred a teacup that steamed with lavender light. The scent had lingered in the air for nearly a minute. Harry watched from the edge of the dais, arms crossed, his scar a dull throb beneath his fringe. He hadn't said anything since they arrived. Something about the mirror unsettled him more than danger ever had. This wasn't a threat, not in the way he understood. It was a question wearing the face of an answer. "It listens," Luna said, finally turning her head just enough to see him in her periphery. "Not to words, to what's behind them." Harry stepped forward. "What if I don't want it to listen?" Luna smiled faintly. "Then it will show you silence." He exhaled, unsure whether to be comforted or unnerved. He looked at the mirror. It showed only their reflections now. Him, tense, jaw-clenched, and Luna, calm, bare feet silent on the cold stone. But beneath the surface, something stirred. A ripple, slow and deliberate, like a fish gliding through deep water. "Try it," she said. "No, yes." He frowned. "You don't even know what I'm thinking." "I don't need to," she said, tilting her head. "But the mirror might." Harry swallowed. He wasn't afraid of what it would show. He was afraid of what it might not. He stepped closer, close enough that his breath fought the glass. He closed his eyes and whispered, serious. The mirror did not flash. It unfolded. The reflection peeled back like layers of old parchment, and suddenly the room was not the Department of Mysteries, but a sunlit hallway, grim old place, but not as it had been in shadows and dust. Here it was alive. Sun streamed through the grimy windows, catching motes of gold in the air. A younger Sirius stood at the bottom of the stairs, laughing, shirt half-buttoned, calling up to someone unseen. His hair caught the light like spun steel. He turned, and for a heartbeat his eyes met Harry's. Not the Harry in the room, but the one in memory, and smiled. Harry's breath caught. Scene shifted. Now they were in the kitchen. Sirius was flipping pancakes with a wand, humming a tuneless song. Creature muttered in the corner, but there was no venom in it. Only the grumble of an old man scolding the world by habit. Wally Weasley sat at the table with a cup of tea, rolling her eyes as Sirius pretended to juggle sausages with magic. Tonks burst in, hair bubblegum pink, and dropped a stack of ministry memos on the table with a groan. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. And yet, Harry could smell the burnt toast. He stepped back, shaking. "That never happened." "No," Luna said gently. "But it could have." He turned to her. "Why show me that?" "Because you wished it had," she said, as if it were obvious. "The mirror doesn't show truth or lies. It shows what the heart remembers, even if the mind forgot." Harry stared at his hands. "I don't want to hope for things that can't come back." Luna stepped forward and placed her palm flat against the glass. Hope isn't the same as forgetting. This mirror doesn't steal memory. It shelters it. Like a locket. Like a song. Silence folded between them. Then from the depths of the glass, a new ripple. A different light. Silver. Soft. Luna's breath stilled. The mirror showed a garden at dusk. White flowers bloomed in spirals, glowing faintly. A woman with Luna's eyes and her mother's smile sat on a stone bench humming. In her lap was a book bound in moth-wing leather. She looked up, as if sensing someone watching, and smiled. Luna did not speak. A single tear traced her cheek, but she did not wipe it away. Harry looked at her, then back at the mirror. "Can we stay here a while?" Luna nodded. "As long as we whisper gently." The air in the Hall of Prophecy hummed with a silence deeper than absence, the kind that pressed against the eardrums like the breath before a storm. Moonlight, pale and fractured, spilled through the high arched windows, catching the edges of the mirror's frame, twisted silver, etched with runes. Harry could almost read, as if his mind flickered at the edge of an old dream. Luna stood beside him, barefoot on the cold stone, her fingers lightly resting on the surface of the mirror. It didn't reflect them, not truly. Instead it showed a meadow under twin suns, a woman humming a lullaby in a language that tasted of honey and rain, and a child with Harry's eyes, but not his face, reaching for a floating dandelion clock. "I've never seen dandelions blue-silver before," Luna whispered, her voice like wind through reeds. "But I remember them." Harry swallowed. He remembered too, a porch swim, a scent of lavender and ink, a hand, small, warm, slipping into his in the dark. The mirror rippled, and then she stepped forward, not from the side, not through the door, from within the glass, as though the surface had been a curtain all along. A figure wrapped in gauzy layers, the color of twilight, her face obscured by a veil that shifted like water. She did not walk so much as unfurl, each step leaving behind a faint afterglow, like the trail of a dying star. Luna did not move. Harry reached for his wand, but his fingers trembled, not with fear, but with a strange recognition, as though his bones knew her before his mind could catch up. "You should not be here," the figure said, and her voice was many voices, some young, some ancient, all threaded with sorrow, and something like reverence. "This mirror does not show what was. It shows what was promised." Harry frowned. "Promised?" She turned her veiled face toward him. "Memory is not a record, boy. It is a pact, a vow between the living, and what must not be forgotten. This mirror does not preserve the past. It guards the versions of us that were almost born, the lives that slipped through the cracks of time, not because they failed, but because they were too fragile for this world." Luna tilted her head. Like the crumple-horned snorkack, no one sees it because they've stopped believing it could be real. "Exactly," the guardian said, and for the first time, Harry thought he saw the shadow of a smile beneath the veil. When the leaf frays, so do the edges of memory, and when memory fails, the world forgets how to dream gently. She reached out, and her hand passed through the mirror's surface like mist through stone. "You have seen these visions because you are both unfinished. You carry holes in your hearts, places where love was lost too soon, where answers were never given. The mirror speaks to the ache, and offers not lies, but longing made visible." Harry thought of his parents' faces, half-formed in the pensieve, of Sirius falling backward through the veil, of Dumbledore's hand, burning in his grip. "And if we follow it?" he asked. "If we go where it shows us, then you walk the borderlands," she said. "The places between what is and what might have been. But beware, some doors once opened cannot be closed. Some memories, once reclaimed, demand to be lived." Luna stepped closer, her eyes wide and unafraid. "Is that so terrible? To live a life that almost was?" The guardian was silent for a long moment. Then softly, "No. But the heart can only hold so many truths before it begins to forget which one is yours." She raised both hands, and the mirror darkened. The meadow vanished. The twin suns winked out. For a heartbeat, Harry saw his own reflection, older, bearded, laughing beside a woman with blonde hair and silver eyes. Then it was gone. "You will return," the guardian said. "The mirror chooses its keepers, and you are already remembering." The air beneath the ministry's lowest corridor tasted of damp stone and time, thick with the scent of moss and forgotten incantations. Luna moved her wand in a slow, deliberate arc, her pale fingers steady despite the chill that clung to the walls. The tip of her wand glowed as soft silver, pulsing like a heartbeat as it neared the surface of the mirror. Harry stood close behind her, arms folded, his breath forming faint clouds in the dim light. "It's stiffened now," Luna said, her voice quiet, almost reverent. "It used to hum only when touched. Now it answers to water." Harry stepped forward, peering into the dark glass. The surface wasn't reflective, not truly. Instead, it swirled with images that never quite formed. A garden under twin moons, a city built in the roots of a colossal tree, a woman with eyes like storm clouds, singing in a language he almost understood. He blinked, and the vision slipped away, leaving behind a faint ache behind his eyes. "Are you sure it's the water?" he asked. Luna didn't answer right away. She knelt, placing her palm flat against the cold floor. Beneath her touch, the stone vibrated slightly. "There's a stream," she whispered. "Not on any map. It runs beneath this level, maybe 20 feet down. It's old. Older than the Ministry. Older than Hogwarts, I think." Harry crouched beside her. "And the mirror?" "It listens to it," she said. "Like a lullaby, or a warning." She rose, and drew a small glass vial from her robes, filled with water taken from the River Otter, where she'd spent summers as a child. With careful precision, she uncorked it, and let a single drop fall onto the mirror's frame. The moment the droplet touched the silver inlay, the glass flared, not with light, but with depth. The surface became liquid, rippling as though submerged. Harry gasped. Inside the mirror, a new image formed. A stone archway overgrown with ivy, standing in a clearing beside a slow-moving stream. The water sparkled under a twilight sky, and on the bank, a figure in a traveler's cloak knelt, tracing symbols into the earth with a wand made of blackthorn. "It's real," Luna murmured. "That place exists." "How do you know?" "Because I've dreamed of it," she said simply. "Every full moon since I was 9. Harry looked at her, really looked. There was no fear in her eyes, only recognition, deep and quiet, like someone relearning a lullaby from childhood. He reached out, touching the mirror's surface. It didn't feel like glass. It felt like skin, warm, breathing. Suddenly, the image shifted. The stream darkened, the water turned sluggish, then red. The figure in the cloak fell, and the archway crumbled into dust. Luna caught his wrist. "Stop. It's showing us a memory of loss." He pulled back, heart pounding. But whose memory? She didn't answer. Instead, she knelt again and pressed her wand to the floor. "Revelio aquam," she whispered. A soft blue light seeped through the cracks in the stone, tracing a winding path beneath their feet. It glowed brightest just beneath the mirror's pedestal. "It's not just near water," she said, standing. "It's tuned to it, like a tuning fork. The magic here, it's not about power. It's about resonance." Harry frowned. "So we need to follow the water." Luna smiled, faint and far away. "Not just any water. Ancient water. Water that remembers." She tucked her wand away and pulled a small, tattered notebook from her pocket. Flipping it open, she showed him a sketch, an underground river marked with constellations, labeled in her looping script. "The vein of Mnemosyne. It's said to flow beneath 7 sacred places," she said. "Temples, standing stones, places where people once went to dream." Harry stared at the sketch, then back at the mirror. The image had faded, but the air still hummed. "We'll need a guide," he said. Luna tucked the notebook away and looked at him, her eyes clear and steady. "Then we'll find one, or it will find us." And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, the hidden stream whispered on. The air beneath London tasted of wet stone and old iron, thick with the breath of forgotten tunnels. Luna walked ahead, barefoot despite the chill, her toes curling against the slick moss-covered bricks, as if sensing the pulse of something beneath. Harry followed, wand raised, its tip casting a trembling blue glow that flickered like a dying star. The passage tapered downward, sloping into darkness so complete, it seemed to swallow sound itself. Only the distant rush of water echoed, a rhythm like a heartbeat buried deep in the earth. Luna paused, one hand pressed to the wall. "It's not just water," she said, her voice soft but clear, as though speaking into a dream. "It's memory. The river remembers." Harry frowned. What kind of river runs under London that no one knows about? The kind that wasn't always underground, she replied, turning to him with eyes that reflected the wand light, like moonlit pools. This was once a tributary of the Lethe, before the city grew and buried it. The Romans paved over its mouth, the Victorians walled it in, but it still flows, and it still sings. He didn't understand, not fully, but he believed her. He always had. There was a truth in Luna's strangeness, a kind of clarity that cut through the noise of logic like a silver needle through cloth. He stepped closer, peering into the gloom, where the tunnel opened into a wider cavern. There, beneath a low arch of crumbling masonry, a narrow river slid by, ink-black, yet shimmering with faint iridescent ripples, as if lit from within. Harry knelt at the bank, reaching out. The water didn't feel cold. It felt expectant. "Don't touch it yet," Luna whispered. "Not unless you're ready to remember." He pulled back. "Remember what? What you never lived." Before he could answer, the surface of the river shifted, not with a wave, but with an image, soft, like an old photograph, developing in dark water. A woman with red hair stood beneath an apple tree, laughing. The child with round glasses reached for her hand. The scene lasted only seconds before dissolving into another, a man in a tattered cloak standing on a hill under twin moons, whispering a name Harry almost recognized. His breath caught. "That's not your past," Luna said gently, "but a version of it, a life that might have been, or one that was forgotten. The river carries echoes of choices unmade, of timelines that flickered and faded." He stared, heart-pounding. Another image rose, Luna, older, her hair streaked with silver, sitting on a porch wrapped in a shawl, reading a book with moving constellations on the cover. And beside her, a man with a scar hidden beneath his hair, pouring tea from a chipped pot. Their hands brushed. A quiet smile passed between them. Harry looked away, throat tight. "That could still be," Luna said, not unkindly. "Time isn't a line, it's a web, and some threads remain unbroken, no matter how far we wander." She stepped into the water. Luna, it barely reached her ankles, but the moment her feet broke the surface, the river ignited, not with fire, but with light, dozens of seams blooming like lilies across the dark, a city built on floating stones, a library with books that sang, a battlefield where wands grew from the earth like trees, and beneath it all, a low hum, like a lullaby half-remembered. She turned to him, extending her hand. "Come, the mirror didn't bring us here to watch, it brought us to choose." Harry hesitated. He thought of war, of loss, of all the things he'd buried too deep to name, but he also thought of this, the quiet beside her, the sense of something waiting, just beyond the edge of sight. He took her hand. The water rose to meet him, not as a flood, but as a breath. And in that breath, he saw, faintly, beautifully, the shape of a life not lived, but still possible. The air in the Hall of Prophecy was never still, even when the torches burned low, and the ministry's corridors emptied into silence. Tonight, it shimmered like heat above stone, carrying the faintest hum, a vibration just beneath hearing. Luna Lovegood stood before the mirror, barefoot on the cold flagstones, her fingers tracing the edge of a small silver chime she'd brought from her grandmother's house in Ottery St. Catchpole. It wasn't magical by ministry standards. No runes, no registered enchantments, but magic, Luna believed, often preferred the overlooked things. Harry watched from a few paces behind, arms crossed, his breath fogging slightly in the chill. He'd seen the mirror's last waking, an eruption of fractured images. A woman with Luna's eyes laughing in a sunlit meadow, himself holding a child he'd never held. A city of glass towers rising from a sea of silver reeds. They'd lasted only seconds before the glass went black, and inert again, as if exhausted by its own memory. "It won't respond to force," Luna said without turning, "or questions. Not the right ones, anyway." "What are the right ones, then?" "The ones before words," she murmured. "The ones that live in the way a candle flickers when someone remembers a lullaby." She placed the chime on the floor and lit a small beeswax candle beside it, then another made of moon tallow, harvested, she'd told him, during the winter solstice from a hive that only sang at dawn. The scent rose slowly, honey, frost, and something like wet parchment, old and warm. She reached into the pocket of her gray cloak and drew out a pinch of powdered bluebell flowers, sprinkling them in a loose circle around the base of the mirror. "Why bluebells?" Harry asked. "They ring when no one's listening," she said simply, "and they remember the shape of kindness." She closed her eyes and began to hum. It wasn't a tune Harry recognized. It rose and fell like wind through hollow reeds, soft and meandering, but with a steady undercurrent, like a pulse beneath the earth. As she hummed, the candle flames stretched upward, thin and tall, their light pooling on the mirror's surface like liquid gold. The chime trembled once, twice, then rang out a single pure note that hung in the air long after the sound should have faded. The mirror rippled, not with images, not yet, but with depth. The flat glass became a pool, dark and still, reflecting not the hall, but something else, a sky threaded with stars that moved in slow, deliberate patterns, circling a center. Only they could see. Luna opened her eyes. "It's listening." Harry stepped closer, careful not to break the circle. "Can it understand us?" "Not language, but intention, memory, regret, hope." She tilted her head, studying the shifting stars. "It's been waiting for someone who remembers without knowing they remember. What do we do now?" "Give it a key," she said, and held out her hand. In her palm lay a small, twisted thing, like a key made of dried vine, or perhaps bone, but glowing faintly at the edges, with a soft blue light. "An echo key," she said, "woven from the sound of a name spoken in love, the scent of rain on warm stone, and a tear shed for someone not yet lost." Harry looked at her. "You made that?" She smiled, just slightly. "I remembered how." He reached out, hesitated, then touched the key with one finger. A warmth spread up his arm, gentle as a memory returning. Images flickered behind his eyes. Ginny's laughter in the Burrows' garden, Sirius's hand on his shoulder, a lullaby his mother might have sung. Not loud, not dramatic, just true. Luna stepped forward and placed the key against the mirror's surface. It sank in like stone into water. The glass folded around it, swirling, and then, slowly, like a door, opening on rusted hinges, the mirror showed not a reflection, but a path, a narrow road of white stones winding through a forest of silver trees, their leaves chiming softly in a wind that carried the scent of salt and thyme. "We can walk through?" Harry asked. "If we're quiet," Luna said. "And if we go not as seekers, but as rememberers." She took his hand. Her fingers were cool, steady, and together they stepped into the glass. The air in the Department of Mysteries had always been still, as if time held its breath beneath the ministry's stone foundations. But tonight it trembled. The mirror stood at the far end of the forgotten corridor, its silver frame veined with cracks that pulsed faintly, like the slow beat of a sleeping heart. Luna stood before it, her pale fingers hovering just above the surface. It didn't reflect her, not quite. Instead, the glass shimmered with a soft opalescent haze, like dew clinging to a spider's web at dawn. "It's thinner," she whispered, more to herself than to Harry, who stood a few paces behind, wan, half-drawn, eyes narrowed. "It's not supposed to do that," he said. "Mirrors don't breathe." Luna tilted her head, as though listening to a sound only she could hear. "It's not a mirror, not really. It's a threshold, and it's waking up." Harry stepped closer, his breath catching as the surface rippled, not from her touch, but from something deeper, older. For a heartbeat he saw himself, but younger, standing in a garden he'd never known, sunlight catching in his mother's hair. Then it was gone. In its place a city of glass spires rose beneath twin moons, and a woman with Luna's eyes smiled at someone just beyond the frame. "Did you see?" he began. "The garden? Yes, that was your father's favorite memory, or it would have been if it had happened." Luna exhaled slowly, her voice dreamy but certain. "This isn't showing us the past, it's showing us the almost pasts, the roads not taken, the lives that slipped through the cracks." Harry swallowed. The air tasted strange, cool and sweet, like rain on dry earth. "So why us?" "Because we've both lived in the spaces between," she said, turning to him. "You in the cupboard under the stairs, me after Mother died. We've always been good at listening to what others ignore." The mirror pulsed again, and this time the glass didn't just ripple, it parted. Like morning mist dissolving under sunlight, the surface thinged into translucent strands that drifted like gossamer threads. Beyond it, A long hall stretched into soft focus, lined with archways of misted glass, each one reflecting a different sky: amber dawns, stormlit nights, stars arranged in patterns no astronomer had ever charted. Harry's fingers twitched at his side. "We can't just walk in." "Why not?" Luna asked, already stepping forward. "We've been invited." "I didn't hear an invitation." "No, but the mirror did." And with that, she stepped through. For a moment, nothing. Then Harry gasped as the world folded around him. Not pain, not dizziness, just a quiet unspooling, like a ribbon sliding from a spool. He was through. The hall was silent, but not empty. The air hummed with the whisper of half-remembered lullabies and distant laughter. The floor beneath his feet was neither stone nor wood, but something in between, warm, yielding, like moss beneath bare feet. Above, the ceiling arched into a dome of shifting light, as if the sky itself had been captured and stretched across the vault. Luna walked ahead, her bare toes curling into the floor with each step. "They forgot to name this place," she murmured. "But it remembers them." Harry followed, heart thudding. In one archway he saw a version of himself teaching defense against the dark arts of Hogwarts, students laughing. In another, Luna stood atop a cliff, wearing robes of woven light, speaking to a flock of silver birds. And further down his breath caught the small cottage by a lake, smoke curling from the chimney, and two figures on the porch. One had his hair, the other had green eyes. "That's not real," he whispered. "It's realer than you think," Luna said softly. "These are the lives that were almost protected, the ones the world tried to forget so it wouldn't ache. But forgetting doesn't make them vanish, it just makes them wait." He looked at her. The light here caught the silver in her earrings, the quiet certainty in her gaze. "And we're here to remember them?" She smiled, small and sad and full of hope. "We're here to bring them home." The air in the corridor tasted old, like parchment left too long in a sealed chest, and every footstep echoed as if the stone remembered each one, storing it in its marrow. Luna walked slightly ahead, her fingers trailing along the wall where veins of silver laced through the dark stone, pulsing faintly like a slow, sleeping pulse. Harry followed, his breath shallow, the weight of unmade decisions pressing against his ribs, as though he'd been walking through them for years. Doors lined the hall, dozens of them, each different, warped by time or intention. Some were carved with symbols that shifted when not looked at directly. Others were nothing but archways with thresholds that led nowhere at all. But every so often, one would shimmer, and behind it, a scene would unfold. Harry stopped before a door of pale oak, its handle shaped like a bird in flight. Beyond it, he saw himself, older, hair streaked with silver, standing in a sunlit kitchen, a child laughing as she balanced on his shoulders. A woman with kind eyes and freckles turned from the stove, smiling. "Dinner's ready, love," she said, and the word settled in Harry's chest, like a stone wrapped in velvet. He didn't know her. He didn't know that life, but he felt it, like a dream, just beyond recall. Luna paused beside him, her voice soft. "That's not the path you walked, Harry, but it could have been." He swallowed. "Why show me this?" "Because it matters," she said, touching the doorframe. It rippled like water. Not all truths are lived. Some are felt in the spaces between. They moved on. Another door opened onto a quiet hillside where a younger Harry stood, longed lowered, offering a hand to Draco Malfoy. No curses, no blood, just silence, and then a slow, reluctant hand reaching back. That door closed before Harry could speak, vanishing into the wall like a sigh. Luna hummed under her breath, a tune without name or origin. "The heart remembers possibilities," she said, "even when the mind forgets." Further down, the corridor sloped upward, the ceiling arching into a dome where constellations flickered, not stars, but memories. A boy flying over a moor on a broom that wasn't his. A girl with radish earrings reading beneath a willow, a dog sleeping at her feet. A couple dancing in the rain outside a small cottage, their laughter swallowed by thunder. Harry recognized none of it, and yet he reached out, brushing a finger against the air beneath one constellation. A warmth spread up his arm, a sensation of being known, not as the chosen one, not as the boy who lived, but as someone simply allowed to be. "Is this real?" he asked. Luna tilted her head. "Is a dream less real because you wake from it? Is a thought less true because it stays unspoken?" A door at the end of the hall stood ajar, light spilling through, soft, golden, like late afternoon in summer. From within came the sound of a piano, slow and wandering, and the faint scent of lavender and ink. Harry hesitated. "I'm afraid," he admitted. "Not of what's inside," Lewis said gently, "but of what it means to want it." He looked at her, then, really looked. In her pale eyes he saw not pity, but understanding, deep and quiet, like a pond under moonlight. She stepped forward and pushed the door open. The room beyond was small, filled with books and mismatched chairs. A teapot steamed on a low table. On the wall, a mirror, framed in twisted roots, reflected not the room, but a version of it, where he and Luna sat together, older, their hands nearly touching, smiling at something unseen. The music played on. Harry exhaled. "We could have had this." Luna smiled. "We could still make it." And for the first time, the thought didn't feel like a ghost. It felt like a beginning. Rain fell in silver threads over the cliffs, mist curling like breath from the stone where the earth met the sky. Harry stood at the edge, cloak damp and heavy, wind tugging at the sleeves as if urging him forward or pulling him back. Below, the sea crashed against jagged rocks, white foam dissolving into the grey. He hadn't meant to come this far, hadn't meant to come here at all. But the mirror had shown him the path, clear as a scar, a winding coastal road, a crooked cottage with blue shutters, and a man himself sitting barefoot on the porch, mending a fishing net. Now the vision had become real. Smoke curled from the chimney of the cottage, faint and steady. A clothesline fluttered with linen shirts, and a single pair of patched trousers. There was no wand in sight. He took a step down the narrow path, boots slipping on wet stone. The air tasted of salt and damp earth, and something else, peace, perhaps, with the absence of urgency. It unnerved him. The door opened before he reached it. The man on the porch looked up slowly, hands still in on the net. He had Harry's eyes, bright, green, too old for his face, but softer, like they'd learned how to rest. His hair was longer, streaked with sun and salt, and there were lines by his mouth that spoke of laughter, not war. He wore a grey sweater, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and around his neck, a thin leather cord with a smooth, dark stone. "Hello, Harry," he said. His voice was lower, calmer, like water over stone. Harry stopped. "You knew I was coming." "I hoped," the other said. "Not the same thing." They stood in silence for a moment, the sea sighing beneath them. Harry's fingers twitched toward his wand, then stilled. It felt wrong here somehow, like bringing a storm into a lullaby. "You're not real," Harry said at last. "No," the man agreed. "And yes, I'm what you could have been, what you nearly were, after the war, the part of you that wanted to stop, to breathe." Harry swallowed. He remembered that time, the quiet years after Voldemort, the offers to lead, to teach, to speak, the way he'd stood in front of Grimmauld Place, staring at the quiet street, thinking, "I don't want to be a symbol, I want to be a person." "But you walked away," Harry murmured. "I did," the man said, setting the net aside. "I came here, learned the tides, learned the names of the birds, learned how to sit with silence without fighting it." Harry looked at the horizon, where the sky bled into the sea. "And what about the world? All the things still broken?" The other smiled, small and sad. "It's still broken, but not every broken thing needs you to fix it." Harry flinched. "I didn't abandon it," the man said quietly. "I just stopped pretending I was the only one who could mend it. That's the lie we told ourselves, isn't it? That we had to carry it all. That if we laid down the wand, everything would fall." Wind stirred the grass. A gull cried. "I still have nightmares," Harry said, voice low. "Even now, even after all this time." "I know," the man said. "So do I. But here, I don't run from them. I let them come. Let them pass. Like the tide." Harry looked at his hands, calloused, marked by years of spellwork and scars. "You're not me." "No," the man said. "But I'm not nothing. I'm the choice you didn't make, the breath you didn't take. And maybe I'm the part of you that remembers how to rest." He stood, walked to the edge of the porch, and looked out. "You don't have to stay, but you don't have to go running back either." Harry closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the weight in his chest, not gone, but lighter, as if something inside him had stopped bracing for impact. When he opened his eyes, the cottage was empty. The net lay folded on the chair. The door was closed. But the stone on the windowsill, dark, smooth, warm to the touch, was real. And in his pocket, he found a single sea-polished shell. He turned it over in his palm, breathed in the salt air, and did not leave. Rain tapped a slow rhythm against the window pane of the Burrows' attic room, a soft percussion beneath the creak of old wood and the distant hoot of an owl settling in the eaves. Luna stood barefoot on the worn rug, her fingers brushing the edge of the small hand mirror she'd found tucked inside a hollowed-out copy of the Quibbler left on her windowsill. It hadn't been there the night before. The glass wasn't silvered like ordinary mirrors. It shimmered faintly, like moonlight caught in water. She held it up, expecting her own pale eyes, her tangled blonde hair. Instead, the reflection showed a sun-drenched kitchen she didn't recognize. A low ceiling hung with dried herbs, sunlight pooling on the wooden table scarred with knife marks. There was the smell of warm bread, faint but unmistakable, carried on a breeze that didn't exist in the attic. And then, movement. A woman stood at the stove, back turned, humming a tune Luna almost remembered. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbows, her hands moving with quiet confidence as she stirred something in a chipped blue bowl. One hand, slender with dirt beneath the nails, reached for a jar of dried lavender. The other, Luna leaned closer, held a ring. A simple silver band, worn thin. It wasn't her hand. And yet, something in her chest cracked open like a seed splitting in spring. The woman turned slightly, just enough for Luna to see the curve of her cheek, the soft line of her jaw. Not her mother, not quite. But familiar, like a half-remembered lullaby, like the way mist curls around trees at dawn. The woman smiled, not at Luna, but at someone beside her. A child, perhaps. The reflection didn't show who. Luna's breath fogged the glass, but the image didn't fade. It deepened. She stepped closer, her toes curling against the cold floor. "Who are you?" she whispered. The woman didn't answer, of course. But she set the bowl down, wiped her hands on her apron, and reached for a teacup, one painted with stars. She poured tea from a pot that whistled faintly, steam rising in delicate spirals, and then she placed the cup exactly in the center of the table, as if waiting. For me, Luna thought. No, not me. But someone like me. She reached out, her fingertip grazing the surface of the mirror. The glass didn't feel cold. It pulsed, softly like a heartbeat wrapped in silk. The scent of lavender grew stronger, mingling with the warmth of the bread, the faint tang of rain-soaked earth. A sound from the hallway made her flinch. Footsteps. Then a knock. Gentle, hesitant. "Luna?" Harry's voice. "Are you in there?" The image flickered. The kitchen dimmed. The woman turned her head, just slightly, as if listening. "Just a moment," Luna called, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. When she looked back, the mirror showed only her own wide eyes, pale and wondering. The attic was quiet again, the rain softer now, the air ordinary, but the scent of lavender lingered. She tucked the mirror into the pocket of her robes, where it hummed faintly against her hip. Harry opened the door slowly, his glasses smudged, his hair as unruly as ever. "You've been up here a while. Everything all right?" Luna smiled. Not her usual dreamy half-smile, but something warmer, quieter. "I found a memory," she said, "one I didn't know I lost." He blinked. A memory? In a Mary. It showed me a kitchen, a woman, tea, in a star-painted cup. Harry stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You think it's connected?" "To the one in the Department of Mysteries?" "I think," she said, touching the pocket where the mirror rested, "that some memories aren't meant to be remembered. They're meant to be returned to." He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in a long time, Luna didn't feel strange for saying what she felt. She felt found. Outside, the rain stopped. A single shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, falling across the floorboards like a path. Rain tapped the stained glass of the Hall of Prophecies, like fingers testing a lock. Luna stood before the mirror, her breath fogging the silvered surface that wasn't quite glass, wasn't quite water. It rippled without motion. Harry watched her silhouette blur and reform, as though seen through layers of old air. The mirror showed nothing now, just the dim vault around them distorted, stretched into unfamiliar angles, but it had shown so much before. A child's hand placing a seashell on a windowsill, a stag's shadow grazing a moonlit wall, a woman humming beneath a constellation that didn't exist on any known star chart. "They're not memories," Luna murmured. "Not exactly. They're echoes of feeling, wrapped in things." Harry stepped closer, his reflection warping beside hers. "You think it's trying to tell us something?" "I think it already is," she said, "just not in words." She reached out, not quite touching the surface. Her fingers hovered. The mirror trembled, once, and then the image shifted. Sand, endless and pale, stretching beneath a twilight sky. A single shell rested at the edge of the vision, pearly pink at its center. The camera, or whatever guided this silent sight, drifted toward it. Then a bare foot stepped into frame, small, a child's. It paused beside the shell. A whisper, wordless, brushed the edge of Harry's hearing, like wind, through dry reeds. Then the sand rippled. Stars bloomed beneath the surface, not reflected, but rising, as if the ground were sky, turned inside out. The shell glowed. The child bent, lifted it. The image dissolved. Harry exhaled. "That was my mother's voice." Luna turned to him, her eyes wide and knowing, not hers, but like it. A feeling she would have carried. "It felt like grief," Harry said, the word catching, "but soft, like it had been held too long." Luna nodded. "Grief with a shell around it, so it doesn't cut the hands." He looked at the mirror again. "So what does it mean?" "It means," she said softly, "that the mirror doesn't speak in sentences. It speaks in seeds. A shell, a star, a shadow shaped like a stag. It's a language of threads. Pull one, and you unravel a life." She reached into her robe and pulled out a small notebook, its pages curling at the edges. She flipped it open. Drawings covered the spreads, crude but careful. A spiral shell, a cluster of stars arranged in a seven-pointed flare, the silhouette of a deer leaping through moonlight. "I've been collecting them," she said. "Every time it shows us something, I draw it, and then I wait, see if the world answers." Harry frowned. "The world answers?" She smiled, just slightly. "Yesterday I found a shell like that one, on the windowsill of the owlery. No one knows how it got there. And last week, when we followed the image of the staglight to the edge of the forbidden forest, we found that sapling growing where the shadow had fallen. It wasn't there before." Harry remembered. A young ash tree, its bark etched with faint lines like antlers. "So the mirror plants things?" "In a way," she said. "Or remembers them into being, like the world forgot how to hold certain moments, so the mirror holds them for it. And sometimes it gives them back." Silence settled. The rain had stopped. A single drop fell from the ceiling, struck the floor, and the mirror shivered. Another image rose. Snow, a small room lit by firelight. A book open on a table. On its pages, a drawing of a bird made of stars. A hand, familiar, thin, with a silver ring, turned the page. Harry's breath caught. That hand, his mother's. And then, the sound, a hum, low, warm, a lullaby, without words. Luna closed her eyes. "It's not just showing us the past," she whispered. "It's teaching us how to remember." Harry watched the fire dance across the phantom room. He didn't try to speak. He let the hum settle in his bones. Let the image of that hand, that book, that made-up lullaby, wrap around him like a forgotten blanket. The mirror, he realized, wasn't broken. It was healing. The air in the forgotten corridor of the Department of Mysteries hung thick with the scent of old parchment and cold iron, a silence so deep it seemed to press against the eardrums. Luna Lovegood stepped lightly over the cracked marble, her fingers brushing the damp stone wall, as if reading Braille only she could decipher. Behind her, Harry moved more cautiously, wand half raised, its tip casting a narrow beam that sliced through the gloom like a blade. "I don't think it's dangerous," Luna murmured, not turning. "It's just lonely," Harry frowned. "You say that like it's worse." She smiled faintly. "Isn't it?" At the end of the hall stood a narrow door, its surface carved with symbols that shimmered when looked at directly, then vanished when one blinked. Luna pressed her palm flat against it. The wood gave way with a sigh, like a breath held too long. Inside, the room was small and circular, lined with shelves that reached into darkness. Books floated in mid-air, drifting like jellyfish in a slow current. At a desk of blackened oak sat a figure, translucent, flickering at the edges, robes so old they seemed woven from dust, its eyes, large and milky, lifted as they entered. "Visitors," it said, voice like pages turning in a sealed tomb. "It has been 12 years, 3 months, and a day." I had begun to wonder if anyone remembered this place. Luna stepped forward. "We're looking for the mirror, the one that shows things that never happened." The archivist tilted its head. "Ah, the Mnemosyne veil. It does not show things that never happened, shows things that needed to happen, but could not." Harry lowered his wand slightly. "And why is it showing them now?" "The wards are weakening," the archivist replied, rising. Its form wavered, and for a moment the room seemed colder. The veil was never meant to be a prison. It was a sanctuary. A place where memories too painful, too fragile, too beautiful to bear in the waking world could be set aside, so those who lift them might go on. Luna's breath caught. "Like dreams we had to forget to survive." "Precisely," the archivist said. "Grief too vast to carry, love too fierce to endure. Moments of such clarity they would shatter ordinary life. The veil held them, and in return it asked only to be remembered." Harry's throat tightened. "So when we see it, the mirror showing me a house by the sea, with a woman humming in the kitchen." "That was your mother's lullaby," the archivist interrupted gently. "Not as it was sung the night she died, but as she sang it every evening when you were small. A memory too sweet for war, too precious to keep." Luna closed her eyes. "And I see my mother, not in the laboratory, not in the explosion, but teaching me how to whistle to the wind, on a hill in Norway." The archivist nodded. "The veil remembers what the mind must release. But it is not infinite. It requires stewardship, and when no one comes, when no one sees, the memories begin to fade, and when they fade, they fray, they leak." Harry thought of the visions, soft at first, and insistent, of life with Sirius, whole and unbroken. A world without Voldemort, laughter in a kitchen that never existed. Or did it? "Are they real?" he asked, voice low. "Are memories real?" countered the archivist. "They live in the heart, not the world, but they shape us all the same." Luna reached out, touching a floating ledger that hovered near the desk. Its pages turned on their own, revealing names, hundreds, thousands, inked in silver. "These are the ones whose memories are kept here," she whispered. "Not kept," the archivist corrected. "Honored, each name a soul who needed to forget in order to live, but who might one day be strong enough to remember." Harry looked down at his hands. "And if we bring the memories back, then the veil breaks," the archivist said. "And with it the balance. Some who remember may not survive the weight of what returns." Silence settled again, heavier now. Luna turned to Harry, her eyes wide and steady. "But some might." He met her gaze, and in that moment, the mirror deep in the next chamber flickered, not with a vision, but with a pulse, like a heart waking. The air in the Department of Mysteries tasted of silence, thick and cool, like breath caught in a cave beneath the sea. Luna stood before the mirror, her fingers hovering just above its surface, not touching, yet trembling as if they remembered the contact. It wasn't glass, not truly, more like polished obsidian, veined with threads of silver that pulsed faintly, like veins beneath skin. Harry stood behind her, arms folded, watching not the mirror, but her. Her hair floated slightly, unbound, lifted by a current no one else could feel. "It's not showing the reflection," she said softly. "Not really." Harry stepped closer. In the mirror there was a house, small, nestled between 2 hills, carpeted in wild thyme. Smoke curled from the chimney. A swing swayed on its own in the windless yard. He didn't recognize it, and yet his chest tightened. He could smell wood smoke. Not the memory of it, no real smoke, sharp and sweet with burning applewood. He blinked. The scent faded. "That's not possible," he murmured. Luna tilted her head. "The mind remembers what the body forgets. That's what my father used to say. He believed some memories were too heavy, too tender to carry alone. So they're given to other things. Stones, trees, mirrors." The image shifted. Now a woman stood in the doorway of the house. She had Luna's eyes, wide, pale blue, full of quiet knowing, but her face was different, softer, worn by laughter and something deeper. She held a basket of herbs. She smiled, not at them, but at someone just out of frame. A child's laughter rang, clear as a bell. Harry's breath caught. It wasn't Lily's voice, not quite, but it resonated in a place he had never opened. "She's not my mother," Luna whispered, "but she knew me, long before I was born." Harry looked at her sharply. "How do you know?" "Because she's calling me Ilara." Silence fell like dust settling. The name hung in the air, fragile as a dandelion clock. Ilara. It meant nothing and everything. Harry felt it in his bones, a soft tug behind the ribs, as if something long buried had stirred. The mirror rippled. The house darkened. The sky turned bruised purple, and the wind howled through the hills. The woman, Ilara, ran inside, clutching the child, whose face remained unseen. The door slammed. The mirror went black. Then, slowly, a new scene formed. A cavern, vast and star-strewn, though no stars should have been visible underground. In the center stood a stone archway, older than memory, its surface carved with runes that shifted, when not looked at directly. Beneath it, two figures, cloaked, their faces shadowed, placed something small and glowing into the earth. As they stepped back, the ground sealed over it, and the arch hummed, low and mournful. Luna exhaled. They buried a memory. A memory? Harry frowned. You can't bury a memory. You can if it's too powerful. If it's not just a thought, but a feeling so deep, it becomes a kind of magic. Love, grief, the promise. She reached out again, and this time her fingertips brushed the mirror. A shiver ran through her. They buried it to protect it. And the mirror. It was meant to guard the knowing, but time wore it down. It forgot its purpose, so the memories began to leak. Harry stared into the dark surface. "Why show us this?" "Because it's not done forgetting," she said, "and someone has to remember for it." He thought of his parents, of Sirius, of all the things he had lost and carried in silence. And now, standing here, he felt something unexpected, not pain, but relief. As if the mirror wasn't asking him to remember alone, but offering to help carry it. Luna turned to him, her eyes luminous. "We don't have to understand it all, Harry. We just have to witness it. That's enough." Outside, the world continued, unaware, unremembering. But here, in the quiet dark, two hearts stood witness to what had been sheltered. Then in that act, something long forgotten began softly to breathe again. The lane curved just a little too gently, as if the earth itself had softened at the edges to accommodate something that didn't belong. Snow dusted the rooftops in uneven patches, clinging to stone chimneys and the brittle branches of hawthorn trees. Harry paused, his breath curling in pale wisps before him, and frowned at the house standing where none should. It wasn't on any map, not in the ministry's records, not in the memories of the villagers who still whispered about the Potters. And yet there it stood, timber-framed, crooked, with a thatched roof sagging under years of unspoken weight, and a single window glowing with a light that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Luna stood beside him, her pale fingers brushing the iron latch of the gate. "It remembers us," she said, voice soft as moth wings. "Not the house, the air around it." Harry glanced at her. Her eyes were half closed, lashes catching the dim winter sun, and for a moment he wondered if she were speaking in riddles again. Except that he felt it too, a hum beneath his skin, a pressure behind his eyes, like a half-remembered lullaby, tugging at the edges of sleep. He took a step forward. The snow didn't crunch beneath his boots. It simply absorbed the sound. The gate opened without protest. Inside, the house was not abandoned. A fire flickered in the hearth, though no one had stoked it. Teacups sat on a low table, steam curling from their rims, as if poured moments ago, though the air held no scent of tea. One cup bore the faint impression of lips, pink, delicate, and beside it, a sketchbook lay open. Harry moved closer. The pages were filled with drawings of a woman with wild, wind-swept hair, and a man with round spectacles, laughing beneath a tree that looked suspiciously like the one in the back garden at the Burrow. But the dates in the margin were wrong. Impossible. 12 years before he was born, 20 years after his parents died. Luna lifted the book gently, her thumb tracing the edge of a sketch. "This is your mother," she said, "but not as you knew her, as she might have been, if time had bent differently." Harry swallowed. "Why would someone draw that? Who lives here?" No one, Luna said. And everyone. She crossed to the mirror hanging above the mantel, a tall silver-framed thing, its surface not reflecting the room, but a sunlit meadow dotted with daisies, and a small boy chasing after a silver-winged hare. The boy turned, and for a breathless moment, Harry saw himself, yet not. This version smiled freely, unburdened by prophecy or loss, and reached out a hand toward someone just beyond the glass. "That's not me," Harry whispered. "It's a memory," Luna said, stepping closer. "But not yours, not exactly. It's a possibility, preserved, like a seed, in frozen soil, waiting for the right season." A cold draft stirred the curtains. The fire dimmed. In the mirror the meadow darkened. The boy turned toward the tree, and beneath its roots something shifted, a shape too deep to name, wrapped in layers of silence and spellwork, older than the hollow itself. "It's not just showing us," Harry said slowly. "It's trying to tell us something." Luna reached out, her fingers hovering just above the glass. "It's not a mirror of the past," she murmured. "It's a mirror of what was forgotten. And it's waking up." Outside, the lane straightened imperceptibly. The house groaned as if settling into a dream it had nearly forgotten. And in that moment, Harry understood. They weren't the ones investigating the anomaly. The anomaly had been waiting for them. The kettle whistled softly in the corner of the room, a thin curl of steam rising like a question mark against the dusty morning light. Luna stood just inside the doorway, her fingers brushing the edge of the coat rack, where a long, faded scarf hung as though waiting. The house smelled of old paper and lavender, the kind of scent that clings to memories too gentle to name. Mrs. Thistledown, though no one had ever quite confirmed that was her name, shuffled in her armchair by the hearth, her hands folded over a knitting project with no clear shape. She looked up at Luna with eyes the color of mist over water. "You've come for the tea," she said, not quite a question. Luna stepped forward, careful not to disturb the uneven floorboard near the hearth. "If it's ready." "It's always ready," the woman murmured. She didn't move, but her gaze drifted to the shelf above the stove, where a single porcelain cup sat untouched. It was delicate, rimmed with silver vines that spiraled around its curves, and though the rest of the kitchen bore the soft wear of years, the cup looked as if it had been polished every morning. "I set it out just now," she added, "though I can't recall who it's for." Luna followed her gaze. "Perhaps it's for me." "No," Mrs. Thistledown said, almost gently. "It's not for you. It's for the one who used to sit by the window, the one who liked their tea with a drop of something sweet, like honey from a hive that hums at midnight. They'd stir it 3 times, no more, and smile as if I'd told a joke I didn't know I'd made." Luna moved to the shelf, her fingers hovering near the cup. "Do you remember their name?" The woman tilted her head, as if listening to a distant sound. "I did, once. It was on the tip of my tongue when the war ended, but it slipped, like water through cupped hands. I only know they always came when the moon was high, and left before dawn. Left nothing but the warmth of the chair, and this cup." She paused, then added, "I still warm it, every evening, in case they return." Luna reached down and filled the kettle, her movements slow, reverent. She lit the stove with a whisper of a spell. No wand needed, just breathe and intention. The house hummed faintly in response, as if remembering something older than walls. Outside, the wind stirred the garden, where moonflowers bloomed in the perpetual twilight of the clearing. They weren't supposed to thrive here, not in this climate, not without magic tending them. But they did, just as the cup remained full of absence, and the chair by the window still bore a faint impression in the cushion. "Do you think they'll come back?" Luna asked. Mrs. Thistledown smiled, her fingers resuming their knitting, though the needles clicked without thread. "I don't know, but I believe in the tea. I believe in the ritual. Some things aren't about return. They're about remaining open. About saying, 'I remember,' even if I can't remember why." Luna set 2 cups on the tray, one from the cupboard, chipped at the rim, and the other, the silver-vined one, lifted carefully from a shelf. She poured the tea, steam curling like whispered secrets. "The mirror showed me a room like this," she said quietly. "A woman setting a cup for someone who never arrived, but in the reflection, the cup was full, and the chair, it was warm." Mrs. Thistledown looked at her, eyes wide with something like recognition. "Then perhaps," she said, The one I'm waiting for hasn't left at all. Perhaps they're simply beyond the glass, sipping tea in a world where names haven't been forgotten. They sat in silence then, two women drinking tea with a ghost between them, the third cup resting on the table, full steaming, and utterly untouched. Rain tapped against the arched windows of the restricted study tucked beneath the Department of Mysteries, a steady rhythm like fingers tracing the spine of an old book. Luna stood by the cracked hearth, her fingers brushing the edge of a parchment spread across the stone mantel. It was covered in ink smudges, half-formed sketches of runes, and lists of names, some real, some imagined, some that sounded like sighs given sound. "This one," she said softly, not turning, "mentions a river that flows backward beneath a willow with silver bark. It's in a letter from a witch in Dorset who says her grandmother used to hum a lullaby about lost shoes and second chances." Harry stepped closer, steam curling from the teacup in his hands. He peered at the cramped handwriting, the looping script that seemed to fold in on itself like a secret. "She really wrote that?" "She did." "Then look." Luna's finger moved to another scrap, this one yellowed and brittle. "This is from a ledger in the old Pruitt records. Lists a payment made in 1781 for mending the veil between echoes, near a standing stone in Cornwall, paid in moon-touched silver, and a nightingale's first psalm of spring." Harry exhaled. No wonder no one took it seriously. "They didn't understand," Luna said, "that grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a thread pulled loose from a tapestry, and sometimes it's a path." She reached into the pocket of her coat and withdrew a small shard of mirrored glass. It shimmered faintly, like oil on water, and when Harry looked into it, he didn't see his reflection. Instead, for just a breath, he saw a courtyard paved in blue stone, a girl with wind-tangled hair tossing petals into a fountain that spiraled upward instead of down. "I felt that," he whispered. "Like I'd been there, like I'd laughed there." Luna nodded. "The mirror doesn't show what was. It shows what almost was, what could have been if sorrow had taken a different turn." Silence settled between them, not heavy, but full, like the quiet after a memory you can't quite name slips just out of reach. "We've been chasing the mirror," Harry said slowly, "but maybe we've got it backward. Maybe it's been leading us to the places where the world forgot to hurt," Luna finished. She unrolled another parchment across the table, this one bearing a map inked in faded indigo. It wasn't of Britain, not exactly. Coastlines blurred, mountains tilted at strange angles, rivers that looped like ribbons. Yet Harry recognized landmarks, the hollow hill where he'd once dreamed of a stag, the bridge near Ottery St. Catchpole, where Fred and George had set off the first fireworks, a meadow he'd never visited but felt in his bones. "They're all connected," Luna said, tracing a line with her finger. "Each story we've found, each fragment of a life that didn't happen, points to a place where pain was softened, not erased, just redirected." Harry thought of Sirius falling through the veil, of his parents lying still in a house covered in snow, of Dobby's wide eyes as they closed for the last time, none of it gone, none of it fixed, but somewhere, in some breath between worlds, was a version where the wind had turned, where a hand had reached out a second sooner, where love had been enough to change the fall. "Is that what the mirror protects?" he asked. "Those almost moments?" Luna smiled, faint and far away. "Not just protects, preserves. Like a locket holds a photograph, the mirror holds what the heart can't bear to lose, and something, doesn't want us to forget." Outside the rain gentled. A single shaft of moonlight pierced the clouds, falling across the map, illuminating a tiny symbol near the northern edge, a spiral with a dot at its center. Harry touched it. "This wasn't here before." Luna leaned in, her breath warm against the silence. "It's a beginning," she said, "or a return." And in the mirror shard, the fountain flowed upward once more. The air in the Department of Mysteries hung thick and still, like dust suspended in time. Harry's breath curled faintly before him, a wisp of warmth in the unnatural chill of the chamber. Luna stood beside him, barefoot as always, her toes curling against the cold stone floor. She didn't seem to mind. Her wide, silvery eyes were fixed on the mirror. It was not tall, not grand, just a narrow oval of ancient glass set into a frame of blackened wood etched with runes that pulsed like slow heartbeats. The surface shimmered, not with reflection, but with memory. Or something like it. Harry had seen himself in it once. A boy with Lily's eyes standing in a field of silver poppies, a woman humming behind him, her voice soft as winged through reeds. He didn't know her. He'd never seen the field, and yet, when he looked, his chest ached with the weight of a love he couldn't name. Luna had seen a house perched on a cliff where the sea sang in harmonics only dragons could hear. The man with her father's face, but younger, laughing as he held a glowing compass that pointed not north, but inward. She'd touched the glass then, gently, and whispered, "Thank you for remembering." The mirror had rippled. Now they stood together in silence, watching. The surface flickered, gray, then gold, then deep violet. And for a moment a child appeared, small and barefoot, holding a paper bird that fluttered its wings in slow motion. The child looked up, not at them, but through, as if sensing their presence across time and veil. "It's tired," Luna murmured. Harry turned to her. "What?" "The mirror. It's been waiting, holding things. No one has thanked it before. Not really." He frowned. "It's a piece of glass." "Is it?" She stepped forward, bare feet, soundless. "Or is it the last witness?" Her fingers hovered just above the surface. The runes along the frame brightened, faintly, like embers stirred. Harry felt it then, not sound, but a hum, lulling resonant, as if the walls themselves were exhaling. Luna spoke again, soft as a lullaby. "We see you, we remember too." The glass dimmed, then flared. Suddenly the chamber wasn't empty. The air shimmered with scent, wet earth, candle wax, the sharp tang of ink. The mirror showed not images, but moments. A woman writing by firelight, her quill moving frantically. A door opening onto a garden where flowers bloomed in reverse, petals folding back into buds. Two hands clasping beneath a willow, fingers entwined, a silver thread looping around their wrists like a vow. Harry staggered. "I know," Luna said, not looking at him. Her voice was steady, but tears gleamed on her lashes. "It's not ours, but it's true." The mirror pulsed again, slower now, like a slowing heart. The images faded, replaced by stillness, a single feather drifting down, caught in a beam of light that didn't come from anywhere in the room. "I think," Luna said slowly, "it was never meant to show the past. Not exactly. It shows what the world tried to forget, and what it needs to remember." Harry swallowed. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his palm flat against the glass. Cold, but not unwelcoming. The surface yielded slightly, like the skin of a pond. A warmth spread up his arm, not painful but familiar. Like a hand on his shoulder after a long night, like a voice saying, "You're safe now." And then, so faint he thought he imagined it, the glass sighed. Not a sound, but a feeling, relief. As if after centuries of waiting, someone had finally spoken kindly to it, as if it had been thanked for keeping watch. Luna smiled. "You're not alone," she whispered. "We're here." The runes dimmed to a soft glow. The air warmed, and in the silence that followed, the mirror did not show anything at all. It simply reflected them. The air in the chamber of Mnemosyne still hummed with the quiet aftermath of revelation, a faint silver mist curling along the obsidian floor like breath on winter glass. Harry stood before the mirror, its surface now still and dark as polished stone, as though it had drawn its secrets back into itself. His reflection did not return. Instead, the memory of what he'd seen lingered behind his eyes. Lily Potter laughing in a sunlit kitchen that had never existed. James ruffling his hair with a grin too warm to be real. A childhood that was whole, unbroken by war or prophecy. "It wasn't a lie," Luna said softly, her voice cutting through the silence like a chime in fog. Harry didn't turn. It felt like one. "No," she said, stepping beside him. Her fingers brushed the edge of the mirror, and a ripple passed beneath her touch, not showing images, but warmth, like the echo of a hand held in yours. It showed what should have been. What could have been, if the world had been kinder. He looked at her then. Her eyes were wide and steady, the kind of calm that came not from ignorance, but from deep understanding. "But that's not truth, that's comfort." "Is comfort not a kind of truth?" she asked. When someone is bleeding, do you show them the wound again and again, or do you bind it? Harry exhaled, his breath fogging the cold stone. It makes you want to stay in it. That kitchen, I could smell the toast, hear my father humming. It wasn't memory, it was a dream wearing my past like a coat. And yet, Luna said, it wore it well. It knew the shape of your longing. He turned away, pacing a slow circle around the chamber. Dust motes drifted in the dim light, each one catching the faint glow from the ceiling's star map etching. I spent my whole life chasing the truth, the real story. Who killed my parents, what Voldemort wanted, who I was supposed to be. And now this mirror shows me a life where none of that happened, where I'm just a boy, happy, ordinary. And I wanted it so badly I almost stepped through. Luna smiled, but it was sad. Maybe that's the point. Not all truth needs to be sharp. Some truths are soft. They cradle you. But what about the people who lived through the real thing? Harry asked, voice low. What about the ones who remember the war, the losses? Does giving someone a better memory dishonor what they actually endured? Luna walked to the center of the chamber and tilted her head up, as if listening to the silence. I think the mirror doesn't replace memory. It shelters it, like a second skin, a place to rest when the real one grows too heavy. Harry thought of Neville, of the way his hands trembled sometimes when he spoke of his parents, of Ginny, who still woke from nightmares about the chamber, of himself, lying awake at night, wondering if love could ever be safe. What if we forget? He murmured. We don't, Luna said. We carry both, the wound and the balm, the fire and the rain after. A long silence settled between them. Somewhere deep in the Department of Mysteries, a door sighed shut. The air shifted, colder now, as though the building itself were exhaling. I'm afraid, Harry admitted. Afraid that if I let myself believe in that other life, even a little, I'll stop fighting for this one. Luna reached for his hand. Her fingers were cool, but her grip was sure. You won't. You're not running toward the dream. You're learning that you deserved it. And that changes everything. He looked down at their joined hands, then back at the mirror. Still dark, still waiting. Perhaps not all truths were meant to wound. Perhaps some were meant to heal. The air in the forgotten corridor beneath the ministry tasted of dust and old magic, thick enough to coat the tongue. Luna Lovegood ran her fingers along the cracked stone wall, her touch feather-light, as if afraid to disturb the silence. Beside her, Harry held the deluminator aloft, its soft blue glow pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. The mirror had shown them this place, not in words, but in images, a narrow passage lined with crumbling arches, each one veiled by a curtain of silver mist that shimmered when no wind stirred. They weren't meant to be read, Luna murmured, her voice barely louder than the breath between heartbeats. But they wanted to be written. Harry frowned, glancing at her. Who? The ones who remembered, before they forgot. She stepped forward, and as she did, the mist parted. Not like fabric, not like smoke, more like memory, yielding to recognition. Then the letters appeared. Faint at first, like ink pressed too lightly on parchment, they hovered in midair between the arches, suspended as if caught between thought and speech. Words formed slowly, letter by trembling letter, as though someone were writing them in real time with invisible hands. Harry reached out, and his fingers passed through the script like water through reeds. A chill ran up his arm, not cold, but deep, the kind that echoes in bones after a dream you can't quite name. I should have told you how the sunlight looked on your hair that morning, when you laughed at nothing and everything. The sentence trembled, then faded, only to reappear a moment later, slightly altered. I should have sent it then, but I thought there would be time. Luna exhaled, her breath, a soft cloud in the chill. These aren't letters that were lost, she said. They're letters that were never sent, never written. The felt. Harry stared at another fragment drifting near the floor, its letters curling like smoke. I kept your scarf for 12 winters. I told no one. I thought if I held it long enough I might understand what I'd done. He felt something tighten in his chest. Not grief, not exactly. Something quieter. A recognition of absence, of all the things left unsaid that still left marks. Do you think they're real? He asked. Luna tilted her head as if listening to a sound. Only she could hear. Real enough to matter. That's what feelings are, Harry. They don't need paper to exist. Only hearts. She moved deeper into the corridor, and more letters bloomed around her, some in elegant script, others in jagged, hurried strokes. A few were in languages Harry didn't know, but somehow their meaning brushed against his mind, like a half-remembered lullaby. A child's plea, a lover's apology, a mother's promise, broken not by intent, but by time. One letter hung low, its words flickering like candlelight. "I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to stay. I'm sorry I wasn't kinder. I'm sorry I forgot your name for so long." Harry knelt before it. The words didn't belong to him, he was sure of that, and yet they fit inside him like a missing piece. He thought of Sirius, of his parents, of Dumbledore, of all the people he'd loved and lost without saying everything he'd needed to say. "Do you think," he began, voice rough, "that we've written letters like this too?" Luna knelt beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the ghostly script. "I think everyone has. Somewhere in the quiet between breaths, we all write them, to the ones we miss, to the versions of ourselves we left behind." She reached out, and for a moment, her fingers brushed the air where the letter hung. It glowed softly, then dissolved into 1,000 tiny sparks, drifting upward like fireflies. "They're not meant to be kept," she whispered. "Just remembered." And in that dim, forgotten hall beneath the world, surrounded by the echoes of love unspoken, Harry felt something shift, not in the magic around them, but within. As if, for the first time, he wasn't trying to recover what was lost. He was learning how to carry it. The air in the chamber was not cold, nor warm, but held the quiet equilibrium of breath suspended. Luna stepped forward first, her bare feet silent on the stone, though the floor seemed to hum beneath her soles, a vibration like the aftertaste of a bell's chime. Harry followed, his wand raised, though not in fear, more in reverence, as one might hold a candle into a cathedral, where the light has long since gone out. The walls were not stone, not exactly. They shimmered, translucent in places, like layers of frozen mist pressed between glass, and within them, frozen, not statues, not paintings, moments. A woman in a blue dress, caught mid-turn, her hand lifted as if to catch a falling leaf that never reached the ground. A boy crouched by a stream, fingers just above the water, a dragonfly poised above his knuckles, wings spread in iridescent stillness. An old man sitting on a bench, one hand on an open book, the other resting on a dog's head, both dog and man gazing not at the page, but toward a horizon only they could see. Harry exhaled. It's like time forgot to move. Luna tilted her head, studying the scene closest to her. A young man standing at a crossroads, two paths diverging behind him, one lit with morning gold, the other shadowed beneath a gathering storm. He wasn't looking at either. He was looking down at a single daisy growing between the stones. His expression wasn't sad, not joyful, just present. "They're not frozen," Luna whispered. "They're pausing." Harry turned to her. "Pausing?" She nodded, stepping closer to the image. "See how his fingers tremble, how the dog's ear twitches. They're choosing. And choice takes time, even if the world doesn't notice." He frowned, moving to another tableau. A girl in a green cloak stood at the edge of a cliff, arms outstretched, eyes closed. Behind her, a village smoldered in the distance. Before her the sea stretched endlessly, waves rising in silent fury, yet not touching her. "She's deciding whether to go back or let go," Harry murmured. "Or both," Luna said softly. "Sometimes the hardest choices aren't between two things, but between holding on and becoming." The chamber breathed with them. Not air, but memory. Not of what happened, but of what almost did. Harry reached out, not to touch the image, but to hover his hand near the girl on the cliff. A warmth radiated from her stillness, like sunlight held in glass. "Do you remember?" A voice seemed to whisper, though no mouth moved. "Not your life, but the life that brushed against it." Harry closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, he saw it, not with his eyes, but with something older. A kitchen table, laughter, a woman humming as she stirred a pot. His mother, but not as he knew her from photographs or echoes in Godric's Hollow. Younger, happier. And beside her, a man who looked like him, but softer, unburdened by prophecy. His father, yes, but also a version that never was. A life where Voldemort never came knocking. He gasped, stepping back. Luna didn't startle. She simply turned to him, her eyes wide and knowing. "They're not lies," she said. "They're truths that found no world to live in. And we're seeing them now? Because someone needs to remember them," she said. "Even if they never happened. Especially then." A soft chime rang, not from any bell, but from the air itself. One by one, the figures in the still moments shifted. The woman caught the leaf. The boy let the dragonfly go. The old man closed the book and stood, the dog rising with him. The girl on the cliff stepped forward, not into the sea, but into the wind, arms still outstretched, face lifted. And the young man at the crossroads plucked the daisy, tucked it behind his ear, and walked down the shadowed path. The chamber exhaled. Harry felt something unclench in his chest, something he hadn't known was there. "Why show us this?" Luna smiled, faint and far away. "Because every choice leaves a ghost, and ghosts lead homes too." The air in the forgotten corridor beneath the ministry was thick with the scent of damp stone and old magic, a quiet hum resonating through the walls like the memory of a forgotten song. Luna's fingers brushed the cold surface of the mirror's frame, her reflection wavy and distant, as though seen through water. Beside her, Harry watched the glass ripple like ink spilled in moonlight, shifting between images too soft to grasp. Children laughing on a beach that never existed, a woman humming a lullaby in a language none had taught them, a garden blooming under twin moons. "It doesn't want to be understood," Luna murmured, tilting her head. "It wants to be remembered." Harry exhaled slowly. "But how do you remember something you've never lived?" She turned to him, her eyes wide, and knowing, like she'd always known the answer, but had only just now decided to share it. "You don't. You borrow it." In her palm she held the small lamp, a thing they'd found in a crumbling chest buried beneath the ruins of an old observatory in Dorset. It was made of tarnished silver, shaped like a seashell, cradling a flame that never flickered, no matter the wind. The flame itself wasn't yellow or blue, but a gentle silver white, like starlight, caught in a jar. They hadn't known what it was at first, only that when Luna lit it, the mirror shuddered, and the visions softened, less like intrusions, more like invitations. Now she lifted it slowly, holding it before the mirror. The light spilled forward, not reflecting off the glass, but sinking into it, like water into sand. The surface of the mirror shimmered, and suddenly the scene changed, not with a jolt, but a sigh. A forest appeared, ancient trees with bark like silver thread, their canopy glowing faintly with bioluminescent moss. A deer stepped into view, its antlers woven through with vines of tiny white flowers. It paused, looked directly at them, and bowed its head. Harry felt a pang in his chest, not of sorrow, but of recognition, like a half-remembered dream he'd carried since childhood. "That's not a memory," he whispered. "It's a feeling." Luna nodded. "The lamp doesn't show us truth. It shows us belonging." They stepped closer, the stone floor humming beneath their feet. The air grew warmer, carrying the scent of petrichor and something sweet, honey and crushed mint. The deer turned and walked deeper into the glade, and as it moved, the edges of the scene blurred gently, refusing to harden into something fixed. It was not a photograph, not a record. It was alive in its uncertainty. "We've been trying to solve it," Harry said, "like it's a puzzle. But maybe it's not meant to be solved. Maybe it's meant to be held," Luna said, her voice soft as the light. "Like a secret you keep warm in your coat." She handed him the lamp. The moment his fingers closed around the cool silver, a new image surfaced, himself, but not. A version of him sitting on a porch swing, a woman with long dark hair, his mother, but older, smiling as she handed him a cup of tea. The house behind them had ivy crawling up the sides, and a cat curled in a patch of sunlight. The scene lasted only seconds before dissolving into ripples. He didn't speak. His throat was tight. It wasn't real. It had never happened. And yet, it had always been true in some quiet corner of the universe. Luna touched his arm, just once. Some memories aren't about the past. They're about the parts of us that are still waiting to grow. They stood there for a long time, passing the lamp between them, letting its borrowed light spill across the mirror's surface. Each vision came like a breath, gentle, fleeting, full of a quiet joy that asked for nothing but to be witnessed. There were no names, no dates, no attempts to explain. Just moments suspended in silver flame, and in that dim, ancient corridor, with the weight of forgotten worlds pressing gently around them, Harry realized that not all light had to burn. Some could simply glow, soft, ancient, and kind, and in its glow lost things could feel found, even if only for a moment. The surface of the mirror shivered like water struck by a stone. Luna stood close, her breath forming a soft fog on the cold glass, her fingers hovering just above its edge. It wasn't glass, not really. It felt warmer than glass should, pulsing faintly, like something asleep and dreaming. Harry stood behind her, wand drawn, though he wasn't sure what good it would do against a memory that refused to stay dead. "It's pulling," Luna said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just us. Something else. Something deeper." The image within the mirror flickered. First a meadow, drenched in golden light, children laughing under a willow tree with silver leaves. Then a sudden shift, storm-lashed cliffs, a tower collapsing into the sea, and a woman with hair like moonlight screaming a name that wasn't heard, only felt. The air in the chamber thickened, pressing against their ears like deep underwater. Harry stepped forward. "Luna." Before he could finish, the mirror cracked. Not shattered, just a single hairline fracture, thin and dark as ink, running from the top left corner to the center. But the moment it appeared, the room exhaled. The torches along the walls dimmed, then flared violently, casting long, trembling shadows. From beyond the chamber door, a low groan echoed through the stone. A sound like the ministry itself was stirring from a long sleep. Luna didn't flinch. She tilted her head, studying the crack as if reading a letter written in a forgotten language. "It's not breaking," she murmured. "It's remembering how to speak." Harry frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Most things don't," she replied, "until they do." She reached out, and this time, her fingertips brushed the surface. The crack pulsed, glowing faintly violet, and the image within changed again, this time, not a memory, but a reflection. Not of the room, not of them. It showed two figures standing side by side, older, their faces lined with time and quiet sorrow, hands clasped, standing before a door made of roots and starlight. Harry's breath caught. He knew that face, his own, but softened by years, shadowed by peace he'd never known. Luna was silent beside him. Her eyes glistened. Then the pull came. It wasn't physical. No tug on their robes, no wind. It was deeper, a sensation in the blood, in the bones, as if their very memories were being stretched toward the mirror. Harry staggered, clutching his head. Fragments flooded in. Laughter in a cottage by the sea, a lullaby sung in a language he didn't know, the scent of lavender and old books, a hand in his, small and sure. None of it was his, and yet it was. Luna gasped. Her knees buckled, but she didn't fall. Her fingers remained on the glass. "They're not lost," she whispered. "They're waiting. And the mirror, it's not showing us the past. It's showing us the places we've forgotten how to go back to." The crack widened, just a fraction. A sound rose from within, not a voice, but a chorus, distant and mournful like bells ringing beneath the earth. The stones of the chamber trembled. Dust sifted from the ceiling. "We have to anchor it," Luna said, "or it'll tear itself open, trying to reach what's on the other side." "How?" Harry asked, his voice rough. She looked at him, then, steady, clear. "By remembering with it," and so he did. He thought of his mother's eyes, not as he'd seen them in a memory, but as he'd felt them, warm, constant, a presence in the dark. He thought of Sirius's laugh, not as a ghost, but as a man who loved him. He thought of Ron and Hermione, not as they were now, but as they had always been. Home in every sense the word could hold. Luna closed her eyes. She spoke no words, but her lips moved, shaping a name no one had ever heard. The mirror stilled. The crack dimmed. The voices faded one by one, like stars going out at dawn, but the image remained, the two of them, older, standing before the door. And for the first time, the door was open. The glass shimmered like water, disturbed by a stone, dropped in silence, ripples spreading from the center outward, distorting the image of the room behind them. Harry pressed his palms flat against the cold iron frame, feeling the faint tremor beneath his fingers. A pulse, not quite alive, but not entirely inert. It reminded him of the way Threstrals breathed, slow, deep, deliberate, as if drawing air from some place beyond time. Luna stood beside him, barefoot on the stone floor, her toes curling slightly against the chill. She tilted her head, silver eyes fixed on the shifting surface. Her lips parted, and a soft hum escaped. Just a single note at first, then a simple melody, wordless and old, the kind that might have been sung by mothers to children long before wands were forged, or spells named. The glass stilled. The ripples slowed, then vanished. In their place, an image formed, a garden beneath a twilight sky, silver flowers blooming in spirals around a stone archway, their petals opening and closing like slow, dreaming breaths. Harry exhaled. "It's not Hogwarts." "No," Luna said, still humming. "But it's familiar." He frowned. "I've never seen it." "Neither have I," she whispered. "And yet, I remember it." The admission hung in the air, fragile as a moth's wing. Harry felt it too, a pull behind his ribs, a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with magic, and everything to do with longing. He shifted his grip on the frame, knuckles whitening. The metal was etched with runes he didn't recognize, looping symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. They looked like letters trying to be remembered. "Did they say what this mirror was for?" he asked, voice low. "The unspeakables say it doesn't belong to any era," Luna replied. "They found it buried beneath a ley line convergence, wrapped in a shroud woven from forgotten names. They think it's a memory vault, but not of people, of places, of moments the world chose to forget." He glanced at her. "And you believe that?" She smiled faintly. "I believe the world forgets things. It's afraid to carry, but memory doesn't vanish. It waits, in stones, in songs, in reflections." The image in the glass changed, now a shoreline, waves lapping at black sand, under a sky streaked with stars that burned in colors. Harry had no name for. A figure stood at the water's edge, cloaked, face turned away, but even from behind, there was something achingly known in the slope of their shoulders, the way they held their hands clasped at their back. Harry's breath caught. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Luna's hum softened, became a lullaby. "Yes, but don't speak to it. Not yet. It's not ready to speak back." He swallowed, eyes fixed on the figure. He didn't know who it was. He didn't understand why his heart ached, as if saying goodbye, but he felt in that moment that he had stood beside that person once, on that shore, beneath that sky, had laughed, perhaps, or shared a secret too soft for words. Luna reached out, not touching the glass, but tracing the air an inch before it, fingertips following the outline of the distant figure. "They're remembering us," she said. "That's why it hurts, because we forgot first." The wind in the room shifted, though there were no windows. The candle flames bent sideways, then straightened. The mirror's surface fogged, then cleared again, now showing a hallway of pale stone, lit by floating orbs of amber light. At the end, a door stood slightly ajar, spilling warmth into the corridor. From beyond it, the sound of laughter, children's laughter, drifted through the glass like a scent carried on a breeze. Harry's hands trembled against the frame. Luna placed her palm over his, her skin cool but steady. "Breathe, Harry. It's only memory." "And memory," she added, her voice like the hush between heartbeats, "is the gentlest kind of magic." The air in the Department of Mysteries was never still, not truly. Even when the torches flickered low and the great black doors stood sealed, there was a hum beneath the silence, like the world breathing through stone. Luna stood before the mirror now, her fingers hovering just above its surface. It wasn't glass, not exactly, more like liquid obsidian frozen mid-pour, its edges seamless against the archway of carved runes that framed it. Harry stood a few paces behind, arms crossed, watching the way the dim light bent around it, as if space itself hesitated here. "It's colder than last time," Luna said, her voice soft, almost reverent. Harry stepped closer. "You can feel that?" She nodded without turning, like breath after a dream, cold but not unwelcome. He exhaled slowly, and the mirror rippled. Not in waves, but in layers, like peeling back the skin of time. The surface didn't reflect the chamber behind them. Instead, it showed a forest at twilight, silver-lit and quiet, though no such place existed in Britain. He'd seen it before, in fragments. So had she. But tonight was different. The air in the room had changed, thick with something old and patient. Luna lifted her hand and pressed her palm flat against the surface. It didn't push through, but the mirror dimpled slightly, like water under pressure. Then slowly fog rose from the edges, thin tendrils curling into the air. Not smoke, breath. Warm human breath, though neither of them had exhaled. She pulled her hand back, eyes wide. Harry stepped forward. "Did you?" "No," she whispered. "It's not us." The fog thickened, drifting upward like memory given formed. It settled across the mirror's surface, soft and opaque. And then, as if drawn by unseen fingers, letters began to form. Names, first one, then another, appearing in looping, archaic script. Names Luna didn't recognize, yet somehow knew. Ilara, of the 13 Springs. Theron, who walked the veil. Mira of the hollow bell. They glowed faintly, etched in steam, each fading only as the next appeared. Harry reached out instinctively, as if to touch one. "Wait," Luna said, but too late. His fingers brushed the glass. The name under his hand, Cassian, flared gold for a heartbeat before dissolving into mist. A sound followed, not a voice, but the echo of one, distant and singing in a language that tasted like rain and old parchment. He pulled his hand back, startled. "I didn't mean to. You didn't hurt it," Luna murmured, stepping beside him. "You woke it." More names surfaced now, faster, overlapping. Some were simple: Neve, Thomas, Lynn. Others bore titles wrapped in riddles. Keeper of Unspoken Hours. The Rememberer. The one who stayed. And though they vanished as quickly as they came, each left behind a weight, a presence, like footsteps in snow no one had walked for centuries. Luna closed her eyes. "They're not just names," she said. "They're promises." Each one said, "I remember. I stayed. I kept watch." Harry watched the steam curl and fade. All these years, people have been standing here, just watching? "Not watching," she corrected, opening her eyes. "Holding. The mirror doesn't just show memories. It needs someone to remember with it, or it forgets to." A long silence passed. The names slowed. Then near the center, one appeared, clearer, brighter than the rest. "Isadora." Luna inhaled sharply. "What?" Harry asked. "That was my mother's name," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Isadora Lovegood." The name lingered. Longer than the others. It didn't fade so much as sink inward, like a stone into deep water, and for a moment, the mirror didn't show a forest or a ruin, or a forgotten sky, but a woman's hands, slender and pale, turning the pages of a book, bound in moth-wing leather. Then it was gone. Luna wiped at her cheek and found it damp. She hadn't realized she was crying. Harry placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle. "Maybe she was one of them," he said. "Maybe she stood right here once." "Maybe," Luna said, her voice steady now, "and maybe she knew we'd come." The steam thinned, the mirror darkened, but the air still held the warmth of breath, of lives spoken into glass, of names kept alive, not by magic, but by love. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of old stone and something fainter, like dried lavender and candle wax left burning too long. Harry stepped forward, boots echoing in the silence that pressed against his ears like submersion in deep water. Beside him, Luna stood motionless, her fingers brushing the edge of the mirror's obsidian frame. It wasn't glass, not truly. It felt warm, almost pulsing, like the skin over a sleeping heartbeat. "It remembers us," she said, voice soft as a sigh through reeds. Harry frowned. "But how? These memories? I've never seen them. Have you?" She didn't answer right away. Her reflection in the dark surface shimmered, then changed. For a fleeting second, she wasn't Luna, as he knew her, but a younger woman in silver robes, standing barefoot on a moonlit shore, placing a seashell into the palm of a child with wild white hair. Then it was gone. Just Luna again, pale and pensive. "I think," she said slowly, "it remembers what we were supposed to be." A breath later, the mirror rippled, not with vision, but with sound, A faint chime, like a bell half-remembered from a dream. And then, from the archway behind them, the soft shuffle of footsteps on stone. They turned. An old witch stood there, leaning on a staff carved with spirals that seemed to shift when not looked at directly. Her robes were the color of twilight, frayed at the hems, and her silver hair was braided with tiny bows and beads of sea glass. Her eyes, large, pale, unmistakably like Luna's, held a depth that made Harry think of tides pulling back from shore to reveal ancient things buried beneath. "You've awakened it," she said, not unkindly. "It hasn't stirred in 70 years. Luna took a step forward. "You know this mirror?" The witch smiled, a slow unfurling of warmth. "I was its keeper once, before the ministry buried it beneath layers of forgetting. Before they decided some memories were too dangerous to remember." She moved closer, each step deliberate, and placed a trembling hand on the frame. A shiver passed through the mirror's surface, like wine across water. Images flickered, brief fragmented. A city of white towers rising from a lake, a great tree with silver leaves, a woman singing in a language that had no name. "I was young," the witch murmured. "Just a girl, really. They called us remembers. We tended the mirrors. There were 7 once, scattered across the world. Each one held a piece of what the world tried to forget. Not secrets, not lies, but truths too gentle for war, too fragile for time." Harry swallowed. Why were they hidden? "Because memory is power," she said. "Not the kind that burns or conquers, the kind that heals, the kind that says, 'You were loved, you were home,' and that kind of power frightens those who rule with fear." Luna's voice trembled. "What happened to the others? Broken, buried?" "One fell into the sea. Another was burned during the Purge of 26, when they decided only official history could be taught." She looked at Luna. "I am the last, the final keeper. I've waited for someone to wake this one, someone who could still feel its song." Harry glanced at the mirror. Another image surfaced. A man with green eyes, not unlike his own, holding a child in his arms beneath a sky full of falling stars. The man was smiling. The child was laughing. It felt like something he'd lost before he'd ever had it. "It's showing us lives we never live," he whispered. "No," the old witch said gently. "It's showing you the lives you forgot, the ones you carried in your blood, in your breath, in the quiet corners of your heart, the ones that whisper when you dream of places you've never been." She turned to Luna. "You have their eyes, my sister's eyes. She crossed the veil long ago, but her song still echoes in you." Luna reached out, and this time the mirror didn't resist. Her fingers sank into the surface like water, and a warmth spread through the chamber, soft as dawn. Somewhere, deep in the earth, a bell rang once more, and for the first time in centuries, the world remembered how to weep. The air in the chamber was thick with the scent of stone and something older, damp parchment perhaps, with a ghost of incense burned centuries ago. Luna stood just behind Harry, her fingers brushing the cold wall as if testing the pulse of the room. Before them, the mirror stood whole and silent, its surface no longer flickering with stolen moments, but still holding a depth that made Harry's breath catch. It wasn't glass, not truly. The frame was carved from a single piece of blackened wood, twisted like roots pulled from the earth, and inlaid with silver symbols that shifted when you weren't looking. The keeper emerged from the shadows like a memory returning. They wore robes the color of twilight, and their face, neither young nor old, neither man nor woman, seemed to change with the light. "You've seen the visions," they said, voice soft as ash falling. "Not dreams, not lies, but memories that were unborn." Harry turned. "Whose memories?" "Ours." The keeper stepped forward, hands resting on a staff made of petrified wood. "Not yours, not mine. Ours. The ones we were before we forgot how to remember." Luna tilted her head, as if listening to a sound just beyond hearing. "You mean the mirror remembers for us? For all of us," the keeper said. "There was a time when the world carried too much. Grief, joy, love, so fierce. It split the sky, the ancient ones. They called it Velshara, the weight of living. And when the wars came, when the stars fell from the sky, and the rivers ran backward, the elders knew. Some memories would destroy us if we kept them, so they made a choice." Harry frowned. "They erased them." "No," Luna whispered. "They didn't erase. They gave them away." The keeper nodded. "The mirror was not made to show truth. It was made to hold what we could no longer carry, joy that made us reckless, love that made us desperate, grief that made us forget how to breathe. The mirror agreed to remember so we could survive. It wasn't magic forced upon it, it chose. Harry stared into the glass. For a moment he saw it again, the woman with his mother's eyes, but not his mother, laughing in a garden of silver trees, a child with messy black hair running barefoot through a field under twin moons, a man with a scar like his, but on the opposite side of his face, whispering a lullaby in a language Harry had never heard, yet understood in his bones. "That's why it feels familiar," he said. "Because it's not showing us lies. It's showing us what we gave up." "Yes," the keeper said, "and what you've been aching for without knowing why." Luna stepped closer, her reflection not quite matching her movements. People forget things all the time. Names, dates, the sound of someone's voice. But forgetting a life? A whole way of being? "The heart remembers even when the mind refuses," the keeper said. "That's why some feel drawn to old ruins, or weep at the sound of certain songs, or fall in love with strangers who feel like home. The mirror doesn't create memory, it echoes what still lives beneath the surface. What we buried so deeply, we call it myth." Harry touched the edge of the frame. A hum rose through his fingertips, low and warm, like a lullaby, sung through stone. Why now? Why are these memories coming back? The keeper's eyes dimmed. Because the world is ready to carry them again. Or perhaps it needs to. There are wounds even time cannot heal unless we remember we were once whole. Luna smiled faintly. Then maybe forgetting wasn't the end. Maybe it was just a pause. "A breath held," the keeper said, "before the next word is spoken." Silence settled over the chamber, not empty, but full, like the space between heartbeats. Harry looked at Luna, and for the first time, he didn't see just the girl who believed in rackspurts and dirigible plums. He saw someone who had always known that some truths are too vast to hold in one lifetime, and in that look, something unnamed passed between them, something that had no name, yet felt like coming home. The air in the Hall of Lost Echoes was never still. It moved in slow, deliberate currents, like breath held too long and finally released. Dust motes spiraled in the dim blue light, catching glimmers from the fractured surface of the mirror, no longer a mirror, not truly, but something between vessel and voice. Harry stood close enough to feel its cool hum against his skin, a vibration just below hearing, like the memory of a song. Luna knelt beside it, her fingers tracing the edge of a silver basin they'd brought from the ruins beneath Stone Hollow, where the earth remembers names in Latin and Old Welsh. "It won't take everything at once," she said, voice soft as dandelion silk. "Not if we don't want it to." Harry looked down at her. There was no fear in her face, only quiet certainty, the kind that comes not from knowing but from trusting the unknown. He exhaled, "Then we give it back slowly. Like handing a dream to someone who forgot how to sleep." Luna smiled just slightly, and reached into the folds of her cloak. She drew out a small vial filled with liquid moonlight, collected at high tide beneath a waiting crescent, stirred with elderwood, and whispered over in a language that hadn't been spoken since before the Romans came. She uncorked it with care, as though it might sigh if handled too roughly, and poured a single drop into the basin. It spread like ink in water, but in reverse, light blooming outward in delicate filaments, threading through the still surface. The mirror shivered. Images rose, not in sharp clarity, but in the way memories return when you're half awake, soft at the edges, colored with feeling more than form. A woman laughing beneath a willow, her hair catching the wind like ribbons. A boy chasing fireflies through a meadow that no longer exists. A pair of hands shaping clay into a bird that never flew. Each one lingered for only a breath before dissolving, not lost, but given. "They're going home," Luna whispered. Harry felt it then, a warmth in his chest, not unlike the echo of a Patronus, but gentler, quieter. Not joy, not sorrow, something older, deeper. Recognition. As if something long buried had stirred beneath the soil of his bones. "Do you remember her?" Luna asked, not looking at him. He didn't need to ask who. A face had flickered in the mirror, faint, smiling, her eyes the same shape as his. His mother, but not as he'd seen her in photographs. This was a moment that never happened in his world. Lily twirling in a sunlit kitchen, singing off-key, flour dusting her nose. A memory not of loss, but of life. A memory the world had forgotten to keep. "I've never seen that," he said, voice thick. But I know it. Luna reached for his hand, her touch light, grounding. Some things are too precious to be held. They have to be returned. They worked in silence after that, guiding the ritual with gestures more felt than seen. Luna chanted in undertones, syllables that curled like smoke, while Harry offered his own breath, his own memories, not of war, not of pain, but of small, quiet things. The smell of Hedwig's feathers when she nuzzled his shoulder, the sound of Hagrid humming while tending the pumpkins, Ginny's laughter in the garden at the burrow, bright as wind chimes. With each offering the basin glowed a little brighter, and the mirror released another wisp of what had been lost, not just to people, but to places, to trees, to rivers that once had names. When dawn finally bled through the high arches of the hall, pale and hesitant, the mirror was still, not broken, not empty. At peace, Luna rose, brushing dust from her knees. "They're not gone," she said. "They're just where they belong now." Harry looked at the first light touching the floor, gold on stone. He didn't feel lighter. He felt fuller, as if something he hadn't known was missing had settled softly back into place. He took her hand again, and together, and walked into the morning. The air, the chamber of whispers, was never still, not truly. Even when the torches flickered low and the stone held its breath, there was movement, fine motes of dust caught in unseen currents, drifting like slow stars through the dark. Luna stood barefoot on the cold floor, her toes curling slightly against the stone as she closed her eyes. Before her, the mirror stood silent, its surface no longer glass, but something deeper, a pool of liquid shadow that breathed in time with the room. Harry watched her from just behind, arms folded, a shiver tracing his spine despite the warmth of his cloak. He had seen many strange things, but this was different, not dark, not light, but something older than either. The mirror had shown them so much already. Luna walking through a garden of silver lilies under a sky with 2 moons, him standing atop a tower he had never seen, holding a wand made of bone and starlight. Moments that had never happened. And yet, when he closed his eyes, he could almost feel the wind on his face, taste the thin, cold air. "We don't know what it will do," he said quietly. "No," Luna replied, opening her eyes. They were pale blue, almost translucent in the dim glow. "But that's why we're here, isn't it? To let it speak." She reached into the pocket of her robes and withdrew a small glass vial. Inside, a single petal floated in clear liquid, white, with veins like spun moonlight. It had come from a flower that bloomed only once every 17 years, deep in the whispering woods, beyond the forbidden forest. She had found it at dawn, still damp with dew, that smelled of old books and rain-soaked stone. "This is a memory," she said. "Not mine, not yours, but one that wanted to be remembered." She uncorked the vial. The scent came first, jasmine and smoke, distant thunder, the crisp iron tang of snow about to fall. It wrapped around them like a sigh, soft and sudden. The torches dimmed. The mirror rippled. Luna poured the petal into her palm and stepped forward. "I give this back," she whispered. "Not to forget, to remember." She touched the surface. Color bloomed, not in the mirror, not just there, but in the air around them. Streaks of silver and lavender spiraled upward, like ribbons caught in a breeze. A sound followed, not quite a melody, not quite a voice, more like the hum of a cello played beneath water. Harry's breath caught. For a moment, he saw a woman with Luna's eyes standing in a field of tall grass, holding a child's hand. The child turned, just slightly, and he saw his own face, small and unafraid. Then silence. The colors faded. The scent lingered, just at the edge of perception. The mirror stilled, its surface now clear as polished ice. Harry exhaled. Did it work? Luna's smile, small and sad, and full of wonder. It arrived. That's all we can ask. She looked down at her palm. The petal was gone. In its place, a single drop of light trembled, like a tear not yet shed. It rose slowly into the air. As it touched the mirror, it burst, not with sound, but with warmth. A pulse gentle as a heartbeat passed through the chamber. Outside, somewhere beyond the maze of corridors and locked doors, a clock chimed. 12 times. No one had wound it. Luna turned to Harry. Her hair glowed faintly, as if dusted with starlight. "It's not about changing the past," she said. "It's about making room for what was never lost, only hidden." He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time he didn't see mystery. He saw clarity, a truth that didn't need explaining. And in that quiet, with the mirror reflecting nothing but the two of them at last, Harry understood. Some memories aren't meant to be recalled. They're meant to be returned. The atrium of the Ministry of Magic had never been quiet. Even at twilight, when the enchanted ceiling dimmed to a bruised violet and the golden statue above the fountain cast long, slanting shadows, there was always movement, robes swishing, footsteps echoing, the rustle of memos flitting like moths through the air. But tonight, something shifted. Harry paused halfway across the polished marble floor, his breath catching not from danger, but from sensation. A warmth spread through his chest, soft and sudden, like sunlight breaking through cloud after weeks of rain. He stopped walking. So did everyone else. A woman in healer's robes lowered the scroll. She'd been reading. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but as if she'd just remembered a lullaby half-summing childhood. A ministry clerk dropped his quill. It rolled, unnoticed, across the floor. An Auror standing guard near the lifts let his wand hand fall to his side, his stern expression melting into something almost childlike, a quiet wonder. No one spoke, no one needed to. It wasn't sound, nor light, nor any spell Harry recognized. It was memory, but not his. He saw a porch wrapped in wisteria, a man with tired eyes and gentle hands lighting a lantern as dusk fell. He didn't know the man, and yet he did. There was a weight to him, a familiarity in the curve of his smile, like a voice heard through old parchment. Harry's throat tightened. Beside him, Luna exhaled slowly, tilting her head as if listening to a song only she could hear. "It's not a spell," she murmured. "It's a remembering." Around them, the atrium had become a gallery of stillness. A young wizard with ink-stained fingers brought his palms to his temples, tears slipping free without shame. An elderly witch leaned against a pillar, whispering a name, "Mama?" so softly it barely stirred the air. The warmth deepened, spreading through the crowd like breath through a sleeping body. Harry felt it in his bones, not joy, not sorrow, but something older than both. Belonging, as if for a single suspended moment, every person in that vast space had been called home by a voice they'd forgotten they'd missed. Luna turned to him, her silver eyes luminous in the dimming light. "They're not alone," she said. "Not anymore." He looked at her, really looked. And in her gaze he saw it. A flicker of a kitchen with cracked tiles. A woman humming while stirring a pot. A cat curled on the windowsill. He didn't know that kitchen, but Luna did. He could feel it in the way her chest rose and fell, in the way her lips parted, as if to call out. The mirror, he thought. It's not just showing us memories, it's returning them. A child, no older than 8, clutching a stuffed hippogriff, stepped forward, unafraid. She reached out, not to touch anyone, but to the space between them all, as if grasping something invisible. And then, in a voice clear as a bell, she sang a single phrase in a language no one knew, yet everyone understood. The warmth pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and then it was gone. The atrium stirred. The quill was picked up. The healer blinked, shaking her head as if waking from a dream. The Auror straightened, gripping his wand once more. Life resumed, step by step. But nothing was the same. Harry turned to Luna. She was smiling, faintly, her fingers brushing the locket at her throat. A simple silver disc, warm to the touch. "They were here," she said. "All of them, the ones we lost, the ones we never knew we'd loved." He nodded. He couldn't speak. The memory was already fading like footprints in sand at high tide. But the feeling, tenderness, deep and wordless, remained. And somewhere, deep beneath the ministry, the mirror shimmered, its surface rippling like water touched by wind, waiting. The air in the Hall of Prophecy hummed with a low, persistent resonance, like the memory of a chord struck long ago. Dust motes drifted in the slanted light from high narrow windows, catching on the glass of the mirror that stood apart from the shelves of crystal orbs. It was not tall, nor ornate. Its frame was dark wood, etched with runes that seemed to shift when not observed directly. Harry stood before it, arms folded, breathed shallow. Luna stood beside him, her fingers brushing the edge of her wand, but not drawing it. She tilted her head, as if listening to a sound beneath the silence. "It's not showing anything," Harry murmured, though he wasn't sure he wanted it to. Luna exhaled softly. "It's showing you when you're ready to see." He looked at her, then back at the glass. For a long moment nothing. Then, like ripples spreading across still water, the surface darkened. Not to black, but to a deep indigo, like the sky just before dawn. And within it a shape formed. A young boy, small and thin, standing at the edge of a forest. Except it wasn't the forbidden forest, not quite. The trees were silver-barked, their leaves whispering in a wind that didn't touch Harry's skin. The boy held a wand too large for his hand, pointed not at an enemy, but at the ground, at his own shadow, which writhed unnaturally, pulling away from him like smoke. Harry's breath caught. He remembered the dream. He remembered it now, not as a dream, but as something buried beneath years of forgetting. He had been 8. No wand, no forest, but the fear had been real. The certainty that something inside him was wrong, unclean, dangerous. That darkness wasn't outside, it was in him. And he had whispered, voice cracking, "I don't want to be afraid anymore." Not a spell, not even meant to be heard. Just a plea, and in the mirror, the boy raised his head. The shadow stilled, folded back into his feet. Harry's hands clenched. "I forgot I ever said that." "You didn't forget," Luna said gently. "You just stopped needing to remember. Courage like that, it doesn't vanish. It becomes part of you like bones." He swallowed, eyes still fixed on the glass. The scene shimmered, then dissolved. Now another image formed. Luna, but not as she was. Older, standing on a cliff above a sea of violet waves. Her hair was longer, streaked with silver. She wore robes the color of storm clouds. Before her stood a woman with the same pale eyes, the same distant expression, but softer. Her mother. Luna did not gasp. She did not move. But her breath stilled, and her fingers curled into her sleeves. The woman spoke, but no sound came. Yet Luna seemed to hear. Her lips parted, trembling slightly. Then she nodded. Then she stepped forward and embraced her mother, carefully, as if afraid she might dissolve. Harry looked away, giving her privacy, even though they stood side by side in silence. When he glanced back, the mirror showed only their reflections, 2 figures in the dim hall, real and present. But something had changed. Luna wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "I never got to say goodbye," she whispered. "She left too quickly. And I thought, if I could just tell her I understood, that I wasn't angry, that I still hear her singing in the wind." "She knows," Harry said, surprising himself. "I think the mirror doesn't show what never was. It shows what should have been said, what should have been felt, and in showing it, it makes it real." Luna smiled, faint but true, like a spell, whispered into the dark. Even if no one hears it, the universe listens. They stood a while longer, the mirror now still, its surface quiet. But the air felt different, lighter, as if a weight had settled, not into their chests, but into the earth, where it could finally rest. Outside, the first notes of evening drifted through the ministry's high halls. Somewhere, a clock chimed. Here, in this moment, time had bent just enough to let 2 lost things find their way home. The air in the chamber of static hummed with a low, resonant frequency, like the last note of a song played on a glass harp. Moonlight, though the room lay deep beneath the ministry, pooled in silver runnels across the floor, drawn to the surface of the mirror, as if by quiet magnetism. The glass no longer showed shifting phantoms or fragmented lives. Now, it reflected only the stillness of the room and the 2 figures standing before it, breathing in time with the silence. Luna reached out, her fingers hovering just above the surface. "It's not afraid anymore," she said, voice soft as dandelion down. "It remembers who it's meant to protect." Harry watched her, the pale light catching the silver in her eyes, the quiet certainty in her posture. He had seen war, loss, the weight of being seen, expected. But this was different. This was not about destiny. This was about choice. "I used to think memories were just what we carried," he said, "proof of what happened. But this is something else. It's not proof. It's presence." Luna turned to him, a small smile touching her lips. "Some things don't need to be proven. They just need to be held." They had walked through forgotten ruins beneath Stonehenge, where runes glowed beneath centuries of moss. They had stood in the whispering grove of elder trees in northern Albania, where the wind spoke in languages no living tongue could name. They had followed the mirror's pulse through forgotten tunnels beneath Hogwarts, where the walls breathed in time with the heartbeat of the earth. And each step had led them not to answers, but to a deeper kind of knowing, quiet, unshakable. The mirror was not a portal, not a weapon, not a relic to be studied or controlled. It was a home. "I won't let the Ministry take it," Harry said, his voice low, steady. "They'll want to catalog it, study it, turn it into a tool." "They don't understand," Luna replied. "They think knowing is the same as seeing." "But some things can only be seen when you stop trying to own them." He nodded. The weight of the decision settled between them, not as burden, but as promise. "We keep it safe," he said. "But we don't hide it. We just tend it, like a garden, like a memory," she added. "Not one that happened, but one that needs to exist." They stepped back from the mirror, turning to face each other. No wands were drawn, no oaths sworn in thunder. Just two people, standing in the hush of a chamber older than memory, offering their silence as vow. "I promise," Harry said, "to remember what it means to forget." Luna reached for his hand. Her fingers were cool, steady. "I promise," she whispered, "to welcome what has no name." The mirror shimmered, not with images, but with warmth. A breath of wind stirred the air, though no door had opened. The light deepened, folding around them like a blanket, and for the first time since they had found it, the mirror did not show a reflection at all. It showed a door, not one of wood or iron, but of pure possibility, arched in starlight, veiled in mist, opening not to a place, but to a feeling. The feeling of being known, not for what you've done, but for who you might be in the quiet between heartbeats. They did not step through. They simply stood, hand in hand, and guarded the threshold. And somewhere, deep in the bones of the world, something ancient exhaled. The air tasted of old parchment and distant rain, the kind that falls on forgotten moors where time hesitates. Luna stood with her fingertips just above the surface of the mirror, not quite touching, as though afraid the glass might breathe. It had stopped showing the impossible things. The city beneath the sea with towers of coral, the boy with Harry's eyes who spoke in constellations, the woman who sang lullabies in a language that made the stars blink. Now it was still, clear, ordinary. Harry exhaled, slow and careful, like letting go of something heavy he hadn't realized he was carrying. "It's over," he said, but the words didn't settle. "We're just beginning," Luna replied. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber like wind through reeds. Sometimes endings are just doors that forget to knock. He looked at her then, really looked. There was something different, not in her face, not in her clothes, but in the way the light bent around her, as though the world had remembered how to shape itself around her presence. He wondered if she'd always been like that, or if the mirror had changed her, or him. Behind them, the corridor that had not been there an hour ago, the one that spiraled like a conch shell, and whispered in voices they almost recognized, was folding in on itself. Stone flowed like water, arches dissolving into mist, the floor softening into moss before vanishing entirely. It wasn't collapsing, it was retreating, as if the space had only borrowed its shape from their need, and now returned to whatever dreams it had been spun from. Harry took a step back. "Do you think it'll come back?" Luna tilted her head, considering. "Only if someone remembers it. And most people forget the things that matter most." He thought of his mother's voice, the one the mirror had shown him, not in memory, but in some deeper truth, singing in a kitchen that never existed, wiping flour from his father's nose. He had felt the warmth of that room, smelled the cinnamon and hearth smoke. It hadn't been real, and yet it had been more real than anything he'd known in years. It felt true, he said. Luna smiled, small and sad and knowing. That's because it was, not as fact, but as feeling. The heart keeps archives the mind throws away. The last of the corridor sealed shut with a sigh, leaving only the quiet hum of the Department of Mysteries. A silence so complete it rang. The mirror stood alone now in the circular room, no longer ancient, no longer glowing, just glass, just wood, just a thing. Harry reached out finally and pressed his palm flat against it, cold, lifeless. He half expected to see his reflection waver, to catch a glimpse of another life, another self, But there was nothing. Just him. Just Harry. Luna stepped beside him, close enough that their sleeves brushed. "We won't forget," she said. "No," he agreed. "We won't." And it was enough. Outside, the ministry stirred. Clocks ticking, owls hooting in the mailroom, footsteps echoing down marble halls. The world continued, unaware of the quiet miracle that had just folded itself into the unseen. But somewhere, deep in the marrow of memory, a door remained ajar, not open, not closed, just waiting, for those who know how to look. The morning after the mirror stilled, sunlight fell across the flagstones of the Department of Mysteries, like something tangible. Golden dust sifted through cracks in the ceiling, warm on Harry's hands as he sat cross-legged before the archway. The air no longer hummed. The silence wasn't empty, but full like a held breath finally released. Luna stood nearby, barefoot on the cold stone, her toes curling slightly as she tilted her head toward the light. "It's remembering quietly now," she said, voice soft as dandelion fluff. Harry looked at her. "You can tell?" She smiled, not at him, but at the mirror. "It used to dream aloud, now it's dreaming in its sleep. There's a difference." He studied the surface. Where once it had shown shifting, impossible scenes, a house by a lake that neither of them had ever seen but knew in their bones, a garden with silver trees, a woman humming a lullaby in a language that tasted like rain, the glass now held only their reflections, but not quite. If he stared long enough, the edges softened, his face blurred into something younger, freer. Luna's hair floated as if under water, and behind her, just for a breath, stood two figures, tall, smiling, holding hands beneath the twilight sky. He blinked. They were gone. "I wonder if it's still showing us things," he murmured, "or if we're just learning how to see." Luna stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his. "Maybe both. Memory isn't a photograph, Harry. It's a kind of magic. It changes every time you touch it." A bird call echoed, impossible, inside the department, but neither of them questioned it. They had long since stopped demanding logic from this place. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old parchment, and for the first time in years Harry felt no weight in his chest, no urgency, no ghosts pressing at the edges of his thoughts. He exhaled. "I used to think forgetting was the worst thing that could happen. And now? Now I think maybe remembering too much can be heavier. But this feels like balance." She reached out, not touching the mirror, but hovering her palm an inch from its surface. A ripple passed through the glass, not of water, but of light, like sunlight on the underside of leaves. "It was never meant to hurt anyone," she said. "It was trying to wake something up, something we all left behind." "Why us?" "Because you've lived between worlds," she said simply, "and I've always listened to the quiet places." He looked at her then, really looked. The sunlight caught the fine silver strands woven through her hair, the faint freckles across her nose, the calm certainty in her pale eyes. She had always seen what others dismissed, and now, perhaps, she had helped him see it too. Outside, the world turned. Ministry workers shuffled down corridors, owls tapped at windows, lives unfolded in ordinary rhythms. But here, in this chamber of echoes and stillness, time felt different. Slower, kinder. Harry stood, offering her a hand. She took it, her fingers cool and sure. "We should go," he said, though he didn't want to. "We can come back," she replied. "It will wait." They walked together toward the archway, the mirror glowing faintly behind them, not with urgency but with peace. As the heavy door closed, Harry glanced back once. In the dimming light, the glass shimmered. Just for a second, with the image of two children laughing on a hillside, their hands clasped, the wind carrying petals through the air. He didn't speak. Luna squeezed his hand, and they stepped together into the morning.